Tuleeko sinulle sähköposti-ilmoitukset? Mulle tulee ainakin läpi. Muutosesityksistä.
Ei tule sähköposti-ilmoituksia.
Mulle tulee.
Mulla on kyllä auki se.
Joo.
Tällä kertaa joku on.
Mutta siinä ei ole tullut mitään, koska mulle tulee näköjään ilmoitukset niistä.
Ei ollut tullut ainakaan ennen kokousta, kun mä katsoin. Ei ollut tullut mitään.
Joo. Mä laitoin nyt yhden testin sitä kautta, koska mä haluaisin tehdä tuleeko. Tulee näköjään vain EP-listalle läpi tyyliin.
Joo.
Niko, laitatteko vielä sen teidän muutosesityksen sieltä lomakkeen kautta? Kiitos.
Pienen tarkennuksen.
Joo, me puhuttiinkin Minna ja Toivon kanssa. Noniin.
Tästä keskustellaan jatkuvasti sitä asiasta eikä niistä pykälistä.
Kyllä.
Pykälä toteuttaa sen asian, mitä tarkoittaa. Ja sitten voi äänestää, että mitä mieltä ollaan. Saattaa tulla keskustelua, että kun siinä on se, että se antaa ikään kuin kirjoittaa mahdollisuuden, jos kun opiskelee tämän toista tutkintoa, vaikka DE-tutkintoa, ja se on 5 vuotta. Niin jos se tulee esiin keskustelussa, se tulee ongelma, niin mä teen siinä kohtaa sitten semmoisen toisen äänestyksen, jossa mä rajaan sen 2 vuoteen, ja sitten voidaan äänestää niitä vastakkain. Niin katsotaan, jos enemmistö on sitä mieltä, että voidaan pidentää 2 vuoteen, mutta ei you get what I mean.
Joo, mutta sitten jos tuntuu siltä, että teet, sitten vaan ilmoitat, että teet toisen esityksen, joita sä haluat, että edustajista sitten äänestetään ne vastakkain. Tietysti ainahan me äänestetään muutokset keskenään ja sitten pohjaa vastaan. Päivää.
Onko mä tästä?
Tämmöistä kolmesta pitääkö?
Testing.
Joo, Kiskin ei ollut jostain sun pillejä.
Siis testing.
Tässä näyttää.
Minkä?
Näistä ei vielä tule mitään lomakkeelle, mutta täällä on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kohtaa, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Pitäisikö, ei vaan ehdotus, mutta keskustelu ensin ja sitten vaan Syllin tapaan niin kuin loppuäänestys jokaisesta 2 putkeen vaan tykitusta.
Niin siis, miten muuta?
Keskustellaan kerrallaan ja äänestetään kerrallaan yhdessä.
Ei kyllä, siis eihän se ole esittänyt minusta vielä mitään virallisesti.
Joo.
Mutta joo, kyllä sitä jotenkin silleen mennä, että me keskustellaan ja sitten tulee jotain keskustelua ja sitten lähdetään paukuttaa.
Se kestää aika kauan.
Joo, ainakin jos sieltä tulee noin kaikki.
Niin kauan viimeksi.
Joo, siis se on hyvä tietysti. Mä olisin toivonut näin vähän aikaisemmin, mutta hyvä. Se kertoo aina, että ihmisiä kiinnostaa.
Vai ottaako vielä?
Jotain ehkä vielä. Vähän tulijoita, niin katsoa mikä siellä on. Jatsin tempo.
koskaan käynyt näin. Kalenteri on vähän mankelissa.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Tätä aika hyvin on väkipaikalla. Mulla on tästä vielä ennen kuin aloitetaan, niin filterrenkaalle listauksia. On tässä parit lisäykset ja päivitykset. Joo, siis otetaan ne ennen kuin aloitetaan. Mä menen se rikki, kun mulki on se auki, kun mä otan kiinni, ettei me rikki.
Mä sain poistua sen kaiken.
Okei. Ensin filterirenkaalta Perttulan tilalle Kainulainen.
Eli siis
Perttula pois.
pois.
Ja Kiku Kainulainen tilalle.
Kainulainen sisään. Koko.
Sitten Skismalta on paikalla Luukkanen. Mäntylä myös sit kärjestä.
Luukkanen. Mäntylä.
Stimper ja Sorvari. Voltilta on Fiilman. Ja sitten Huttunen tulee myöhässä, mutta se tähti siihenkin vaan. Joo. Kokoomukselta on pelkästään Sireen.
Kokoomuksella oli pelkästään Sireen. Joo, totta. Niin se laittoi mulle kanssa.
Noin, ja Luovalta tulee vielä Juvonen, mutta sekin tulee myöhässä. Ja Anu Juvonen.
Niin, että ne on merkinnyt Luovan.
Joo, siis joo. Oli lisäys vaan toi Juvonen. Nyt pitäisi jotain 36 nimeä sieltä tai jotain sellaista. Äänivaltaisia on vaan kyllä.
Miksi se nyt laskee? Eikö niin, että tietenkään laske siihen? Joo, kyllä varmaan ihan hyvä. Päätösvaltainen selvitys.
Katsotaan, ettei sulla ole aika mitään valtiosalaisuuksia.
Jaas, kuuluuko tämän mikrofonin kautta? Ilmeisesti kuuluu. Kuuluuko?
Can you hear me?
Oops näyttää peukkua, hienoa.
Yes, Oops is giving a thumbs up.
Alo? Kuuluuko tää? Kuuluu.
Hello, can you hear me?
Kuuluu myös striimiin. Erinomaista.
Also the stream can hear me. Yes, great.
Tervetuloa Aalto-yliopiston ylioppilaskunnan
Welcome
kokoukseen
the Aalto University student
2022.
Representative Council meeting on Thursday, the 30th of October 2022. It's 5:25 p.m.
Ja avaan kokouksen.
Opening meeting, closing item 1, moving to item 2, regarding members and deputy members of the council who are unavailable, disqualified, ineligible, resigned, and present.
Käydään läpi läsnä olevat jäsenet ja
We'll go through the members present, and Antti will perform the roll call. So, Antti, the floor is yours.
Aallon
Thank you.
kokoomus, Sireen.
Let's start with Aallon kokoomus, Sireen.
Ja oliko näin, että ei ole muita teiltä?
And am I correct in assuming that you're the only one from your coalition, your group? Okay.
Yes, joo.
Kem.
Tämän pöytäkirja. Hanska. Kiitos. Muita teiltä?
Anyone else
Ei
from
muita,
Kem?
selvä.
Apparently no.
Kaat.
Kyltärirengas.
Klinikka Keskifrontti. Adriansen. Haapanen. Kainulainen. Huikuri. Yläpoikelus. Palmqvist. Riihimäki. Takanen. Niemi. Suomela. Onko vielä muita? Ei muita, selvä.
Anyone else from your group?
Onko Lujan edustaja paikalla?
Anyone from Luja here?
Ei paikalla, selvä. Luova.
No. Okay. Luova next.
Saikku. Ja lisäksi on ilmoitettu, että Juvonen myöhässä.
It has been announced that Juvonen will be coming in late.
Sitten Skisma Mäntylä.
And Skisma.
Stimpert.
Stimpert.
Sorvari. Luukkanen. Muita? Ei muita.
Anyone else from Skisma?
Vihreämpi Aalto, Regner.
No. Then Vihreämpi Aalto.
Robbins. Matson. Aaltio. Pääkkönen. Palosuo. Selvä. Sitten Määttä.
And Määttä.
Malvikko. Pyhälammi. Heikkinen. Oliko vielä muita?
Anyone else?
Ei muita. Voltti.
No.
Pilman.
Then moving on to Voltti.
Pääsihteeri hyväksytään myös. Huttonen myöhässä ilmoitettu sen lisäksi. Onko muita?
And yes, Huttunen will also be coming in late. Anyone else from Voltti? No.
Ja Vooga, Keskinisula.
And Vooga.
Poissa. Onko paikalla?
Absent.
Ei korvaa. Ja
Keskinisula is absent. Is anyone there to replace them? No.
ja Helaskoski. Ja siinä on kaikki teiltä.
And
Yes.
that's everyone from your group. Okay.
Herra puheenjohtaja, läsnä 33 edustajista.
Dear Chair, we have 33 members of the Representative Council present and 2 will come in later.
Tai joku myöhässä tai joku täältä pois.
Yes, if anyone comes in late or leaves during the meeting, please let us know
Täällä ajan tasalla.
so that we know how many votes we have here.
Ja ihan paikalla on ollut ketään, kenen nimeä ei mainittu.
And just to make sure, Is anyone here whose name was not mentioned? No. So yes, we have 33 members of the Representative Council present. Also granted the right to speak to AYYE personnel, OPS people, and the interpreters. And also the financial manager, financial committee, other committees. Anyone else who needs to be granted the right to speak or the right to be present?
Ei ole, joten päätetään kohdan 2 käsittely.
No. Closing item 2.
Kokouksen laillisuuden sekä
Moving to item 3.
valtaisuuden toteaminen.
Recording the lawfulness and quorum of the meeting. According to the regulations, we have quorum when there are at least 25 representatives present and the chair or vice chair of the RepCo. And also the invitation has to be published on AYYE's bulletin board and webpage at least 7 days before the meeting. The invitation to the meeting must be sent via email at least 7 days prior to the meeting in Finnish, Swedish and English. We have at least 25 representative council members present and the chair, and the invitation has been sent 7 days prior. These conditions are met, so the meeting is lawful and has quorum. Closing item 3, moving to item 4, electing 2 persons, approving the minutes and 2 vote counters. And as before, I propose that the people who approve the minutes are act as deputies to vote counters and vice versa. So we need 4 names. Opening discussion. Any suggestions? Fielman? Fielman is available for approving the minutes.
Hienoa.
And Luukkanen.
Sitten vielä 2 ääntenlaskijaa. Tänään varmaan päästään äänestelemään, eli
only need 2 vote counters. We'll probably have some votes today. Saikku.
Sitten 1 vielä uupuu.
Okay, 1 more.
Yes. Anteeksi, Riihimäki. Kiitos.
Yes, Riihimäki.
Hienoa, 4 nimeä saatiin kasaan, joten suljen aiheesta keskusteluun.
We have 4 names, closing discussion. So the people who approve the minutes are Fielman and Luukkanen. Their deputies are Saikko and Riihimäki. Saikko and Riihimäki will be vote counters, and Fielman and Luukkanen will be their deputies. Closing item 4, moving to item 5, confirming the agenda. The agenda has been sent to you with the invitation to meeting. Does anyone have anything to add or comment on it?
Ei ole, joten hyväksytään esityslista kokouksen
No, so we can confirm the agenda as is. Closing item 5, moving to item 6, announcements.
Avaan aiheesta keskustelun. Onko
Opening discussion, any announcements to make?
Kainulainen ensiksi ja tosiaan otetaan
Kainulainen.
Ja semmoinen pyyntö on muuten tullut meidän
And yes, a microphone there.
osastolta, että muistakaa puhua selkeästi.
And so please remember to speak clearly and calmly. I may not be the best example about this, but yes.
Matinkylästä Kivenlahteen 3.12. alkaen.
You can take the metro from Matinkylä to Kivenlahti starting from the 3rd of October. So the subway line will be extended soon. Anyone else? Any announcements to make?
Ei ole. Itse voisin ilmoittaa, että
well, I have an announcement to make. The application to the chair of the Representative Council and also the former of the board are open. Please apply. Closing item 6, moving to item 7, latest news from the office. Today, chair of the board, Usva Järvi, will present the latest news. And I think we will have the questions at the end.
Yes. Kuuluuko?
Yes, can you hear me?
Kääntäjille myös.
Can interpreters hear me as well?
Mahtava
yes.
Kuulla.
Great.
Tervetuloa kuuntelemaan toimiston kuulumisia
Yes, welcome to hear the latest news from the office.
Tulee vähän kiirekin kasata kaikki, mutta toivottavasti
Sometimes we're going in a hurry to compile them, to do them so often, but hopefully this is a good overview of what we have done. So about the community, the TI-50 or the T150 anniversary year is now going on, so there's a lot of work in that. Event day on the 30th of September was a success. We have purchased a big battery-powered JBL Party Box 310 speaker. We also recruited the working group for the capping ceremony. And upcoming events, well, there are others as well, but here are some examples. The 18th of October, there's this evening for making words for songs, and on the 27th of October, we have the Aalto Amazing Race. Student Culture Museum also have organized photography training for volunteers. And for real estate, as was mentioned last time, nothing much has happened since 2 weeks ago, but something has happened. So these basic projects are progressing. On Atlantinkatu, we had some water damage. I think it's the second or third one this year. And the increase in costs will affect the schedule of the student center. As hopefully everyone has noticed, general costs have increased, including construction costs. And they have climbed so high that it will affect the schedule of the student center project. We will also have to postpone the sale schedule of our real estate because of the same reason. So it's likely that we will have the actual decision only next year. The investment and funding market has changed quite a lot. So even though the buyer has been interested in to make the sale, they have not received enough funding for it yet. So we are looking into the follow-up or continuing measures constantly. And then about services, the action plan projects related to service communications is progressing. And for communications, a new chief of advocacy and communications has been appointed. They will start their work in November. We will soon have a bulletin about that. And also communications for volunteer recruitment is going on, so that's quite a lot of work as well. So the chair of the RepCo and former of the board, the application period is open for both. Then also have this design notebook jury convened and selected the winner. Bulletin will be coming up for this as well. We have done a lot of event communications, also communications related to these plot transactions related to Otakaari. And some happy news related to analytics. So our Instagram reach and engagement increased by 50% in September. We have met with this Minister Honkonen, Minister for Science and Culture. Then we also had this equity drop-in this week. Also have elected a new chief for advocacy and communications, as mentioned. We also have a meeting for persons responsible for social policy issues, organized by SYL, both today and tomorrow. And we also have had SYL delegation meetings, 2 of them. And we have also gone through the General Assembly materials. The SYL General Assembly, that is. Some of the board met with Minister Honkonen. Next week, we will have a meeting with SEXMY, the coalition of Southern student unions in Southern Finland. And this frequency of having RepCo meetings 2 weeks apart has caused a lot of work for us at the office, especially for me. I think we have to consider maybe if we should have them every month and not every 2 weeks.
Hallituksen syysloma on siirretty ensi
And
viikolla.
the autumn holiday for the board has been postponed. It was originally meant to be next week, but now it's at the start of November.
Erinäisiä päätöksiä. Tässä on niistä
We have made some decisions in the board. Here are some of them.
erinäisiä asioita.
Gone through different things.
Lakitustyöryhmä,
We have appointed the working group for the capping ceremony,
IT-politiikan lähetekeskustelu,
had a preliminary discussion on IT policy.
käyty läpi vapaaehtoiset
We have also gone through the
kirjat,
minutes for volunteers for
keskusteltu
Q2 and 3,
lähetekeskustelusta
had a preliminary discussion on budgeting and also on the action plan,
hyväksytty merkkimafia
approved Merkkimafia ry and Aalto Chess associations into our association's register. We have also discussed
varautumisesta.
about how to prepare for our 100-year anniversary in 2024. So it's actually the anniversary for Tempaus.
100 vuotta.
So the Tempaus tradition will turn 100 years old in 2024.
Mainostetaan kyllä, mutta koska
We will advertise it, but because we hope that this is something that really arises from the community,
varata sille varmuuden
we will not
sitten
allocate our own resources for that,
talousarviolla päättää,
but rather the representing council may add these resources
nousee ensi vuonna. Ja
for good projects if such projects emerge.
sitten me myönnettiin poikkeuksellisesti
Then we also
yökäyttely
granted an exceptional extended nighttime permit for Smökki for the Steekkari 150
pyritään minimoimaan ja tällä ei esimerkiksi
after party. But still we want to keep the noise there at the minimum, so there is no artists there or anything like that.
Ja Syllin delegaatiolta tuli eilen illalla toive
And also there's a request made by the Syl delegation to change the composition of the delegation,
aamulla.
and the board
Meillä ei ole valtuuksia
concluded today that the board doesn't have the authority except to supplement the composition of the delegation. We cannot change it
kokoonpano. Ja
because we have already approved the delegation's composition at a meeting, RepCo meeting that is. So if you want to change the composition,
edustajiston tulee
it means that the representing council needs to
yes.
make a proposal for change themselves or take a stand on the topic themselves. And then yes, now it's time for questions if you have any.
Yes, kiitos Jaakko Siren, Aallon kokoomus.
Thank you, Jaakko Siren from Aallon kokoomus.
Käytettyä niitä kyselyn tuloksia. Siitä tuli
So we had the preliminary discussion. Did you make
vastauksia, että niitä olisi saanut käyttää.
Use of the survey? Because I heard that there weren't enough answers to make use of them. But if you cannot use them, can we send feedback non-anonymously so they can be used in this? I have to say that I'm not 100% sure, but if the meeting was done before the 6th of October, before we had the preliminary discussion, then I believe that yes, because Annika had very extensively prepared for this already. So it should be easy to add comments from the RepCo to it as well. Yes, Poutanen.
Vihreämpi Aalto.
Poutanen for vihreämpi Aalto. The wish request from the Syl delegation was that we'll bring up to the representing council up for discussion this new composition. We didn't ask for the board to change the composition, but rather to bring it here for the RepCo to discuss. And I'm a bit disappointed that you didn't put it in the agenda, but we will put it up in the agenda for the next meeting. I suggest that you contact the chair of the representing council, because as you may have noticed, when we discussed something that arose yesterday, it was quite complicated to go through it, because please take into note that we have guidelines that formulate the process for appointing the delegation.
kaikki päätökset ja päättää mistä mitä tahansa.
Of course, the council can decide what they will, but there is a process there. But yes, send me a message so that we will see that it is also done properly, administration-wise. Any other requests for floor?
Ei vaikuta olevan, joten
Apparently no.
Otto ja
Thank you, Otto.
keskustelun. Ja edustajisto päätti merkitä tiedoksi toimiston kuulumiset.
So,
Päätetty.
the motion is to decide to record the latest news from the office. This has been decided. Closing item 7, moving to item 8, housing regulations update.
Ja niin kuin hyvin muistatte, niin toisessa kokouksessa, eli syyskuun...
As you may remember, in our meeting in mid-September, we had a preliminary discussion on the housing regulations, and now we will have the actual decision about it. And before I give Sampo the floor, I know that Kylterirengas has a proposal for change, and Emil has also sent us a list of comments. So please also submit those through the feedback forum so that we will actually discuss them in the meeting. If you have many separate proposals for change, I suggest you enter them separately, so that we have separate items for them. And in order to make a proposal for change, it requires someone to propose it and also a backer. Then we can vote on it. So now is a good time to write them down and submit them the proposal for change. And now, Sampo, please.
All right. Can you hear me? Wonderful.
Yes, teillä on varmaan kaikilla taas ollut ikävä mua.
Yes, you probably all missed me.
Edariputkea, niin tänään tosiaan
So,
asumisen ohjesäännön uudistus.
Today about the housing regulation update,
Päätöskeskustelu.
the decision-making and discussion.
Tosiaan tänään
So,
uudistuskäsittely.
today we'll have the
päätöskeskustelu.
update discussion and the preliminary debate. We'll be today be discussing the proposed change, either approval or disapproval, or whatever other options we have here. So what's actually changing? So the housing regulation and the other document which will be under debate, they will be combined into the new housing regulation. And these, the ones that won't be changing will be the policy paper and the other documents listed. So what has changed? Based on the preliminary debate, we've had lots of stylistic changes in word forms, talk about housing services, and actually move them to a convenience which is actually practically applicable. Also, the right of residence won't be passed, even though they will be moving in 1 to 2 months before the start of the semester. No changes with the queuing position if you are absent. We kind of made it kind of more sensible for the role of doctoral certificates, so it actually will be required only for mandatory things and won't be public, etc. The appendix for scorings will be changed into the tenant choice appendix. The times for changes will be also have been actually clarified. We also have the update on the legislation up in Parliament. And we talk about stylistic changes like scoring to tenant choice. Without further ado, we've sent to the Representative Council's emailing list from Minna to answer most of the questions that were raised during the preliminary debate. I'll be going through the office comments
Tosiaan jatko-opiskelijoiden kohdalta niin
On
lähetekeskustelussa
postgrad students,
toivottiin, että heidät
there was a wish that they would be
rinnalle
lifted
käsittelyssä,
to be equal to basic
mutta tosiaan tässä on
academic tenure students,
muutamia kommentteja,
basic
miksi me ei tehtäisi näin.
graduate studies. But comments on why we're not going to do that is that
Opintojen alkuvaiheessa olevat
when you're at the start of your studies, you're mostly
asemassa
in the gravest need of your an apartment, you have the least income, and you're in general an underdog in this situation. And in addition, the ARA specifications concerning special groups, student housing is meant mainly for individuals who are participating in education, which is applicable for student allowance. And this means that postgrad students are not included in this group. So this is an argument why we are proposing that the office's proposes for no changes. So yes, no changes proposed on our part. In family and friend or shared friend flats, those are kind of a proposal that they should have the same position. Friend apartments or shared friend apartments with friends. Is that currently we have the situation where both need to be members to be applicable. But of course, in family flats, this is not the case because we cannot actually require people to only set up families with AYYE members.
Historiallisesti päädytty tekemään, koska
on
haluttu tarjota perheellisille asuu yhdessä. Ja kaveriasuntojen
historically we decided because we wanted to offer as many AYYE members flats as possible.
Siihen, että kaveri ei olisi meidän jäsen, niin tämä käytännössä tarkoittaa sitä, että
and if a friend wouldn't be a member, it would actually mean that we'll end up in the situation where we would have non-members be a majority in our apartments. So we have two proposals for change, which are the options. Number one is the exempt from families is removed and all members need to be members, or all applicants need to be members, or only one applicant need to be a member in all apartments. So in practical, it would mean that we'll have more non-members in AYYE apartments. Family member or families actually have increased protection through legislator for dischargement or disclosure of rental agreements. That is why we are not proposing changes from the board. Then we have shared rental agreements. This current model is mainly based on Kela interpretations to which we cannot really affect with regulations based on Kela's interpretation on who are part of the same household and who are of a different household. So there's a kind of physical things like door locks. For example, we don't door locks in rooms, and friend flats don't actually have locked individual rooms. It would require physical changes to our apartments. But with this timetable, it's not possible to implement these. And it's very difficult to evaluate what kind of changes will take place, which is why the office is not proposing any changes for this either. Students in Mikkeli. We had a very good preliminary discussion about the students in Mikkeli. And in the group chair meeting, we had more discussions. And in the last meta, there's kind of a policy issue. The office will be completely kind of not taking a non-disclosure for this. We are not taking a stance on this. My personal comment would be that this should be looked at more broadly, and the services offered to Mikkeli students, what we want them to be in their entirety. So we are not proposing for any changes for this one either on the part of the representative council. If you have any changes, then you will do them. conscription service applicable to non-military service personnel.
Opintovuotenaan suorittamaan menevät
There was the wish that people going through the military service or non-military service during their first year
niin sanotusti
could be actually
suoraan asuntoon, kun he palveluksesta.
be included in the queue but still be absent.
Ihan validi kommentti. Ja
It's a kind of a valid comment in our opinion, and we feel that we propose a compromise that where the military service individuals will be frozen in place for the queue for their absence. So they won't be penalized for their military service, but they won't basically kind of proceed in their queue spots. So kind of a neutral option. Moving in during the summer before the start of your studies. So currently the regulation is going to propose that the first year students could maybe move 2 months to 3 months before their studies. We're aiming to kind of balance out the queues of the fall, or kind of the rush period of the fall. There's a lots of discussion about whether or not will this kind of cut down on your graduate degree based right of residence by 2 months. And there was also a comment that should we go for 3 months instead of 2. So we feel this is kind of a positive if people will move during the summer, because it will mean that less moving in during September and well, August. But if we actually have the 3 months, it actually means that we'll be coinciding with people moving out during the spring. So the benefits gained by AYYE are less. So it's not kind of practical. We are not proposing for 3 months.
Ja tosiaan nähtiin ihan perusteltuna, että koska me AY:nä hyödytään tästä, että ihmiset muuttaa kesällä, niin turhaan heitä on myöskään siitä rangaista, että jos eli ehdotamme siis, että
microphone for a moment and the voice is back. So we are proposing that this right of residence will be continuing until you finish your graduate degree, which is the 2 months solution. And in right of residence, we had a kind of a vote, and we didn't actually look at it more.
Keväällä 2023, kun pisteytysliitettä tai asukasvalintaliitettä käsitellään.
We will be looking at this in spring 2023 as we look at the scoring appendix.
Ei ole jaettu, koska ne valmistui tuossa noin vartti sitten.
Hasn't been shared because the document was ready about 15 minutes ago.
Yes. Haluatko jakaa ne?
Can you share them now? Yes.
Yes. Kalvot tulee kohta edustajistolistalle.
You will be receiving the slides on the Representative Council list. Sorry, they were a bit.
Yes. Kiitoksia. Tässä kohtaa mä
Thank you.
Avaan aiheesta keskustelun. Ja päästä meidän
Opening discussions.
Minä avaan aiheesta keskustelun.
I will be opening the discussions, and you may ask for the floor. To start with the known procedure, if you have direct questions pertaining to the presentations, and we have discussions afterwards. If you have proposals for change, please present them here in the Great Hall. Thank you. Emil first. Thank you, Chairperson. A few quick questions.
Yes, eli
So Takiva was presented about the queues and moving to these queues. I'm ensuring that this is correct. I didn't actually
mutta tämän pohjalta kuitenkin pystytään säilyttämään tämä tilanne, jossa sä voit kuitenkin saada
I'm a bit perplexed by the situation where in the future you might gain a place to a kind of a shared apartment and then a kind of studio. And
etua ja ne, jotka on aikaisemmin asunut meillä, jää sitten vaan siihen yksilön jumiin.
That people who've been in the queue will gain benefits, and people who have accepted a studio at some point will actually be stuck in the studio. So, will there be an option where we're primarily offering studios to people who are living in our flats? The situation that we will have, what will actually be happening to this? So we are basically following the ARA regulations. So queuing is not an ARA thing. We should look at the applications based on the application themselves. If they are equal, we look at when it's been left. But people who are currently living in our flats, we can maybe make this kind of thinking that they're living in a shared flat, and that maybe we could change the situation, that we could give the shared flat to a next person and give the studio, so it could kind of free a slot if they change. And actually add that we can also kind of earmark different apartments for different uses. So shared flats could mainly be meant for people in the start of their studies. And that the continuation could go that you start in a shared flat and then kind of move on to a studio once some free up. Any other questions? It's a good presentation if there are no questions. It was a clip of
Niillä on varmaan hyvä aloittaa. Otetaan ensin Filman ja sen jälkeen yläpoikkeus.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja. Tuun sinne eteen selittää. Tosiaan saatoitte huomata
starting off with Filman, you might have noticed that I sent something on the email list I'll be bringing up in this meeting. Hopefully, I feel that the office is actually supporting my proposals. But there will be upcoming proposals for change, which focuses on housing and housing kind of tenement meetings. So the policy paper actually that we look at the regulations comes from the legislation. The speaker is actually speaking very fast, so it's hard to interpret. But we cannot, as AYYE, we cannot decide on many of these things because they come from legislation. But at this stage, I only have a few items which I can do proposals for. Change. Sorry, I only got this on my laptop very recently, so. Can we get the proposals up on the big screen for a moment? Let's do so that we'll have all the discussions and then. Touko will reprimand me if I've said something wrong.
Yes, eli tuohon alkuun niin
so to start with, so line 58. So we're starting about students who start their studies. If you are starting your conscription and continuing to live on AYYE, so it would be sensible. You can actually do so without being impeded by. Also, the line 151 that all applicants to the word form all individual applicants.
On tämä järkevyys siinä toiminnassa.
It kind of has a sensibility concerning families and applicants.
Muistaakseni tämä
Line 314, the addition to the word as an assumption.
Linnis, niin siinä kohtaa.
Who is the castle warden here?
Ei, se oli tuossa kokouksista, eli oletuksena on.
So yes, this was the meetings. So the assumption is that we only have one meeting per unit.
Niin tuolla oletuksella sanalla korvataan tai korjataan tämä asia, että koetettaisiin päättää, että olisi vain yksi, mutta se ei ole siis laillista kieltä tai laillista kieltä.
There's also legislation concerns here. 330, where we add the change the word must be to would good be to something that should be done.
363 liittyy siihen, että jos puheenjohtaja ei halua olla.
363, an addition to or if the chairperson does not want regarding castle wardens and 370 addition about the chairperson as well if a person chosen as this. Apologies, the speaker is not making a very lot of sense, very hard to interpret. What about line 370 about the chairperson? Asking that these are the comments heard to the interpreters. Jos tulkilta kysytään, niin siis jos me emme kuule, niin miten me voimme sanoa, että emme kuule, kun me ei tiedetä, että siellä jotain kommentteja tulee.
Thank you. Eli muistan pyydän teitä puhumaan
Please
rauhallisesti ja selkeästi.
Speak in a calm and mild manner and a good pace. Niko, thank you.
Onko sinulla tähän väliin?
So if you have quick comments here, let's take the commentary before moving on. So technically, these proposals are not any problematic in any way, but line 330, that we will maybe look at this, that what the actual word form should be. Is there a kind of a problem there or a mistake? But all in all, technically these look okay. I will not look at the ideological side of things, but technically these seem to be perfectly acceptable. Niko, please.
Kiitoksia, puheenjohtaja.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Ehdottaisin, että
I would propose that we talk about equality for a moment. And to do with, I will also do a proposal for change. A proposal for change, which would be the ideology to increase equality in our student union on part of the flats and apartments. Today earlier, I sent an email, very broad or very long list of grounds. Hopefully you'll have time to look at this document at some point. In short, I feel that the Gyldenrengas group feels that this legislation on time is not fair to students where they study on another campus outside of the metropolitan area. Currently, the Aalto University Mikkeli campus, which is the only other campus, the students are being treated like people studying in Otaniemi, but practically they, during their studies, cannot utilize AYY's apartments because they live so far away. The practicality is that it's the same for every AYY members, but AYY's policy does not mean that because it's same, it's equal. And housing is the biggest highly valued thing according to members, according to the 2020 survey.
ja toisena oli opiskelijakulttuuri, jonka
And we also had the biggest thing that AYYE offers according to the survey was flats. Second being kind of by 20% margin is the student culture and events.
Painotetuissa tilastoissa 46% jäsenistä
So
oli käyttänyt
46% of surveyed individuals had rented a flat from AYYE within the last 6 months. So what we want to propose is that a solution where other AYYE campuses or individuals who come to Otaniemi would be treated with equity than in relation to students who study in the metropolitan area. So in practice, basically, students who come from other universities, this would be made with a proposal for change based on also, because it's quite long and very bureaucratic, and it's seconded by Aalto. So in addition for proposal for change, we also have an actual English unofficial translation for this document.
Lisätään Aalto-yliopiston tutkinnon muualla Suomessa kuin pääkaupunkiseudulla aiemmin suorittanut jäsen, joka ei ole asunut
interpreters have regrettably not received this document, but I will try to paraphrase.
Täyttyessä erikseen hakea asumisoikeutensa pidennystä.
A student making their graduate degree otherwhere in Finland than the metropolitan area who has not lived in an AYYE flat can apply for an extension to their right of residence. Thus, their right of residence would be extended based on the application. The start of that semester in which the member will start their studies in the metropolitan area for the first time. Based on this, the right of residence can be extended so that it will be equal to the length of their time of studies in the metropolitan area. There's a last phrase. The member may not apply after this on other extensions to the right of residence. So looking at the last phrase, you can't kind of double down on this. The aim of this is to increase the equality of AYYE members not studying in Otaniemi. It won't give them anything extra, but it will actually raise them to an equal level. Thank you.
Yes, kiitos Niko. Joo, ole hyvä Emil.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja Firma Voltti.
Thank you.
Mielestäni ehdotus
the proposal seems to be, well,
niin kuin epätasa-arvoistava.
Okay.
Eli jos sä oot opiskellut
but it's kind of unequal.
Etänä, et ole asunut täällä.
But if you have studied in Aalto, but you have not lived here,
etuutta Mikkelissä opiskeleville. Lisäksi
it's kind of unfair advantage to people studying in Mikkeli because not all of our members can actually live in our flats. Which means that this is kind of unfair to them who are applying the metropolitan area but won't get a flat. We shouldn't give special dispensation to members who are studying in Aalto but not in the metropolitan area. It shouldn't be a reason for special dispensations. I would ask at this stage that if you send these both proposals on a single form, but they will probably be voted one by one. We have one longer addition from Yläpoikelus and of course be voted against the template. And then Emil sent Sirene's complying, seconding. We have these smaller changes one by one against the template. Currently, they are not problematic in relation to one another, so they don't have to be voted against one another. Next up, we'll have Luukkanen and Saikku.
Point of order.
äänestää, jos ei sitä muutosesitystä. Ja sitten kun kannattaa, niin silloin me äänestetään.
Yes, the interpreter could not hear the comment because the person wasn't using a microphone. But yes, about the voting and proposal for change. Yes, Luukkanen from Skisma. First, apologies Allu for having to run over here because of this. Just have a comment on yläpoikaluus is I'm going to hear on the preparation behind it. As Sampo mentioned, this is something that is the Representative Council needs to make a stand on, and we had a discussion on how to write this down. Technically, it's correct and it's feasible, but it's something that the Representative Council
lisättävää, joten Saikku, ole hyvä.
Saikku luova. Olisin näistä Emilin muutosehdotuksista kans mieluusti kuuluu.
It's not up for. Yes, I also like to hear about Emil's proposals for change, about your comments, the board's comments, that do you feel these are good proposals or should we think them through some bit more? This is a technical question. Emil kind of made the assumption that regardless of what will happen today, in the next meeting there will also be some new proposals brought to the board. So does this mean that we will table this issue, postpone it, or do we decide it, approve it today and then amend it in the next meeting? So I was thinking that what would be the best procedure for this if new proposals for change are coming in also after this meeting. So what would be the best solution?
Eli tuohon niin kuin 5-8 rivillä olevaan ja alun perin.
So for line 58,
siinä me katsottiin sitä juuri AY:n edun näkökulmasta.
We looked at it from the point of view of AYYE's interest. So it's good that people can move in earlier or already in the summer. So the new phrasing here, it's feasible,
kuitenkaan niin kuin se ei
but
niin kuin auta, niin kuin se ei ole niin kuin AY:n, niin kuin se ei vaikuta meidän niin kuin tyhjäkään.
It doesn't really affect the situation of having apartments empty. So if you want to make this proposal, we can, but it's really that we are not 100% in favor of it. And line 340. Well, these other changes, they're good proposals that make the text easier to understand, even though they're mostly stylistic changes. And yes, I'll add for line 58, the starting point here was that to minimize having apartments empty in the summer. That's why we thought that it's good that students could move in already during the summer in June. Then when we think that for those starting their studies in January, for them to get the same benefit, well, I think it already stated there that the residency time does not start from June for those moving into June. So if we want to be equal, we would have to extend this also to those starting their studies in January.
Anteeksi, Juhana, mä olen skipannut sut saat kohta puheenvuoron.
Jatkanko?
Yes, can I continue?
Anna mennä, sano vaan, liittyy tähän kuitenkin.
Yes, if it's related to this. There's a comment to this. The way I see it is that the office means that for AYY's interests, doesn't really matter for them, this change, but for students and their legal security, I think it's wise to make this change on line 58.
kesäaikana asuntoon 2 kuukautta ennen. Eli
that a student can move in 2 months prior,
pois, jotka jäisi silloin tilanteeseen, että voit muuttaa asuntoon vasta.
kind of in general, not just during the summer, the 2 months before the start of their studies.
Mikä on epäoikeudenmukaista.
Because it is unequal if it's only granted for those starting in the summer or in the autumn. It's also good to offer this to freshmen in general. So it may not make a difference for AYYE itself, but it's very important for the students and their legal security. Yes, apologies, I skipped someone over, but now I'll try to remedy that. Yes, I'd like to say that I'm in favor of Ylä Poikalusi's proposal for change. I'm still studying my Mikkeli degree myself, and I can say that living in Mikkeli has been, the housing there has been kind of directed to the student housing organization there. So it's kind of a similar the situation as to many other student unions. And when people from Mikkeli move into Otaniemi, as they often do, it's a similar situation to people from other universities moving on to Otaniemi. But the difference here is that the people studying in Mikkeli pay for the student union fee, the membership fee. So that's why we need to have more unified approach to these issues.
Tähän väliin nopea kommentoida. Joo, siis tosiaan tässä kohtaa on ehkä hyvä totuuden nimissä myös huomioida,
I think it's good to note that our housing operations are not funded through membership fees, just as a note, so that everyone is clear on that. Yes, I was about to bring this up myself as well. And the people in the Mikkeli campus have similar possibilities to live in these student dorms, student halls of residence. And we don't pay for our housing through membership fees. Yes, Blinni from the top row there.
Linnikka, Kyltäri-Rengas. Tiedän
yes,
aika hyvin,
from Kyltäri-Rengas.
Että toi raha ei tule samasta
We
paikasta.
pretty much know that the money doesn't come from the same place.
Mutta juttu on,
but the point here is that people studying in Mikkeli
arvoa AY:stä ja
don't get much value from AYYE.
Consider that our members actually feel like they're getting value from their membership. And particularly on this issue, they don't feel that way. So where the money comes from, perhaps that is relevant, perhaps that's not, but it's also relevant that people actually feel like they're getting value from their membership. So something to consider.
Thank you, Filman. Thank you. Shall I say something controversial now? I don't really feel that I get any kind of essential benefits from paying my membership fee. So I don't think that if someone feels that they get or don't get benefits from their membership fee, I don't think that's a point to consider when considering equality issues. Thank you. Now, let's ask, are any more proposals for change coming in, except for these? If there are, I'll give you a moment to prepare them, but please let us know if you need this time. Then Sainio. Could we just see our slide? Yes. We have some last-minute changes here that the board cannot propose anymore. So these are the kind of changes that we hope for. So please, if someone could propose these changes, because the board cannot. So we urge that if someone could propose them and someone else back them. They're pretty much kind of a stylistic changes to correct any errors or kind of incorrect phrasing. So the first one is to change the name of the financial committee to the right name. Then the second change is to change so that Tenet meeting that it will not be held in November, but at the end of the year, so that it's more flexible. But yes, any other requests for floor?
Pakettiin, niin pyydän pikkuhiljaa sitten viimeiset puheenvuorot. Otetaan varmaan pieni tekninen tauko sen verran, että katsotaan
discussion. I think we can have a short break before the votes to get the voting in order. But if you raise the floor, please raise your hands once more. Saikku, you have the floor. I'd like to ask if Emil, you meant that in addition to these proposals, you will also bring some proposal for change for the next meeting. Yes, Emil, you can answer.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja. Juu, eli me juteltiin tuolla ylhäällä toimiston kanssa ja niin kuin heidän näkemyksensä mukaan osa näistä voidaan, esimerkiksi nämä mitä mä oon esittänyt, niin tuoda nytten ja sitten muut asiat, jotka on niin kuin isompia asioita.
These are what are proposed now, and then other issues that are kind of bigger that kind of concern these actual tenant activities, tenant meetings that I would propose them in the next meeting. And yes, we can kind of approve this now and then make the amendments later, but if you want to, we can also table this issue. So
kommenttina, pitäkää sitä mikrofonia ihan suoraan suun edessä ja tosi lähellä, että edes tänne eteen asti ei meinaa aina kuulua.
Liittyykö tähän samaan asiaan vielä? Ole hyvä.
In front of your mouth.
Onko joku tietty syy, että tämä haluttaisiin saada hyväksyttyä nyt 2 viikkoa aikaisemmin vajaavaisena?
So is there a reason why you want to approve this kind of 2 weeks earlier with kind of some deficiencies? Why do you want this now? This sounds kind of peculiar, that why should we approve this document now in a hurry and then change it in the next one? Well, we have this kind of a complete document that is brought to you, and now we are discussing of whether you want to make amendments afterwards.
No siis periaatteessahan voisit käsitellä ne kaikki nytkin, koska ne liittyy nimenomaan
So kind of, I think that we can also discuss of all the proposal for change now as well, but to put it simply, we could adhere to the pertinent legislation first. Then there's also this about the castle wardens that you commented on.
Ja hallituksen puheenjohtaja. Tai sen, niin. Ja ne kohdat, ne on kaikki sellaisia, mitkä pystyy kyllähän helposti tekemään ja stilisoimaan siis itse asiassa vain yhdellä tyhjentävällä lauseellakin.
And the president of the board. We can also stilize this quite simply as well. I think we're good if we could approve of it so that we can actually approve it during this year. And since we haven't tabled anything yet with this representing council, I just want to make it clear what this term means. Well, we have the proposal made by the board, and you can vote on changes to this template, but you can also make a proposal where we will table this, meaning that it will be postponed, or it can be postponed, or then it can be tabled, which means that we will interrupt handling the matter immediately and continue on where we left off in the next meeting. So these are different things, tabling and kind of postponing. If we table it, we will cease addressing the matter immediately. in this meeting.
Kiitos puheenjohtajan firmavoltti. Eli tosiaan tää on mun syy.
Thank you.
Tosi myöhään
This is my fault that I'm bringing these up for proposal so late.
Ja vielä lisäksi tuohon, että pöytäys vaatii vain sen 5 henkilöä. Ja sitten
And I think tabling issue only requires 5 persons backing it, but returning it back to preparation requires half of the repco to decide so. And if it's brought back to preparation, the board can also make changes, but if it's tabled, then the board cannot make any changes in the meantime. But in this case, they are pretty much similar, these two options. Please remember to use the microphone correctly. Keep it directly in front of your mouth. Next, yes, Hämynen. Then Mäntylä.
Mulla oli vaan kommenttina tuohon Kylterirenkaan ehdotukseen, että eikös ookin niin, että mikkeliläiset voi olla asuntojonossa AY:n PK-seudun asuntoihin jo Mikkelissä ollessaan.
Comment that those in Mikkeli can queue for the apartments in the capital region even when they are studying and living in Mikkeli. So as a reminder. Yes, thank you.
Kainulainen Kylterirengas. Siis kyllä voi, mutta nythän me ollaan
yes, you can,
sitä
but we are now
sääntelyn mukaiseksi, että
changing it so that it complies with the ARA regulations, so that the need for an apartment is essential, the most important criteria.
Samalla tavalla auta, jos oikein ymmärrän.
So being in quo for many years may not kind of be as the same, have the same kind of emphasis as having a big need for it. But yes, I just want to remind you that the kind of a final model for this will be brought to Reps and Council in the winter. But yes, the role of queuing, being in line for a long time in the new model, is not as useful anymore when handing out apartments. Smantula from Skisma had to ask, but Fielmans, if you can show that slide.
Rivi 363.
Line 363. An addition if the chairperson does not want to is the addition. But do you who have prepared this, do you feel there is kind of any kind of a good reason for the castle warden being the same person as the chairperson? Is there a reason for that? Well, no, they don't need to be the same person. It's just kind of easy.
Varsinaisesti juuri sitä yhteishallintolakia, että se ei ole ollut se puheenjohtaja, vaan se on ollut nimenomaan linnanisäntä.
It hasn't been the chair, it has been called the castle warden. So we want to have this kind of a title there still, and that's why it's been combined with chairperson, the title of a chairperson. But if someone doesn't want to be a castle warden and a chairperson at the same time, well, the castle warden's task is to do the inspection rounds on the apartments. That's the main task of the castle warden. But of course, they can be different persons as well if they want to. They don't need to be the same person. Just like to comment on Ylä-Poikaluusi's proposal, because as an old Mikkeli student, it felt kind of peculiar that my right of residency at AYYE elapsed, even though I didn't have the right to apply for the apartments. I know many other Mikkeli students have wonder about the same thing, that their right of residence is reduced during their studies, even when they don't have the right to apply for the apartments yet. Yes, Filman from Voltti. As a quick comment to the previous question about when this document would enter into force, I think the kind of assumption was that on the 1st of November, but we also have a meeting coming up on the 31st of October, so we can still approve it then. And there's a good comment on that Mikkeli people can be in the housing quo, and it gives a benefit for these people to get an apartment. So even though we don't get as much benefit from being in the quo in the future as before, it still brings some benefits if you are there kind of at the top of the quo. And Mikkeli people will also move here in the capital region, and that means that they get the same benefits as freshmen. So it kind of they have benefits. It brings benefits to them of being in the quo even after this change and even when they are still studying in Mikkeli. So it doesn't really change that drastically. Next is Stimpert and then Yläpoikelus.
Stimpert Schisma, so I want to know if we would table the decision on this, would this also mean that the decision on the 2 changes would be delayed?
Could you ask that again?
Like, so there are the 2 proposals for change. Will we definitely decide on those today, or is that now all in question that would all be delayed to the next meetings?
Molemmat nämä muutosesitykset käsitellään tänään.
Both of these proposals will be looked at today.
Molemmat nämä muutosesitykset käsitellään tänään ja siis tuossa Filmanin esityksessä.
And Fielman's proposal has several listed, so they'll be all separate, but they will be all handled today.
Mikä on tämä käsimerkki, Emil?
What is this hand gesture, Emil?
Kyllä, tietenkin.
Yes, of course.
Lähtökohta on, että niistä
So,
tänään päättämässä.
to start with, we are making the decisions today in total about this document.
Tämä ilmeisesti vastasi kysymykseen.
This answered the question, I trust. Anybody, any additions? Okay, Nico, please.
Kiitoksia.
Thank you. In short, I'd like to answer Fielman's request of the floor that the situation is pretty much the same as with people, freshmen or first years, regarding the urgency. So since the requirements are the same, the right of residence should be the same. We are not actually giving them anything extra. If you're doing your master's degree here, they will be increased to at most 2 years. It's not a bonus. It's something you gain 2 years wherever you come from to study at Aalto. So the idea is not to kind of raise people above others, but we bring people to the similar level, all of us. Fielman. Thank you, Chairperson. And will they take to their base to the fact that the Mikkeli applications will be frozen until they'll be moving here? They will be not gaining any actual gains for having been here for 3 years in the queue, which would be a significant advantage. If somebody feels that this is needed, you may raise it as a requirement, but I would not include it in the template. The idea here is that the broader context, which will be decided later. So all kinds of optimization should be cut down, if I understood the preparations. So I believe that this can be decided there. I would everybody who's making decisions, we're talking about a really, really small group of Aalto students. Out of even a smaller group requires this change. We are mainly talking about the principle that we want to take the low standard of services for AYYE and Mikkeli into account, and that housing is an important issue, that it should be equal. We won't have lots of Mikkeli people rushing in to kind of trump the queues. I can't believe this would be the case.
Niko,
I feel that we have reached the end of fruitful conversation here, so that we would be ready to vote. I hope that nobody has, or checking that, does anybody have any proposals for change incoming? No. Good. So the floor is ready, the table is set. Let's do so that I will be closing discussions because we have no request for the floor. We will ask a 5-minute technical break, check the voting, and return in 5 minutes.
Noita, ottakaa eväitä.
Please grab snacks.
Muutosesityksen vielä siitä. Sitten pitää tehdä muutosesitys silloin. Laita sinne lomakkeeseen.
Jos päätettäisiin palauttaa valmisteluun, niin se olisi varmaan ensimmäinen muutos, jota käsiteltäisiin. Toisin.
Miten te jokaisen nostanut niinku...
Lähinnä, että jos noissa on sellaisia asioita, mitkä... Anteeksi, Minna.
Viimeisiä viedään, tulkaa hakemaan.
ajattelin, että me ei enää puheenvuoroja kyllä. Mä vaan sanon, että näin on ja sitten mennään äänestämään. 7 vuotta sitten Sulin jo keskustelun, niin mä en halua sitten lähteä uudestaan enää avaamaan. Mä koen, että me ollaan keskusteltu siitä jo tässä. Sen
Sitten katso ilman, palautetaan valmisteluun ja sen jälkeen nämä toimistotoiminnot muutokset, sen jälkeen yläpoikennuksen toivoma ja sen jälkeen Filmanin muutokset kerralla.
Saat lyhyen puheenvuoron. Joo. Kiitos paljon. Se oli yhteensä 11. Hienoa, jatketaan.
Wonderful. Let us continue with the subject at hand.
Meillä tuli vielä juuri ennen taukoa, niin
before the break, we had a last proposal for change Fielman, proposing Luoma, seconding, returning to preparation, short request for Fielman, and no other requests will not be taken. Thank you. So I was discussing with Saikku a good point that we could have these without, do these in the next meeting without big votes. Would be actually cut down on the amount of voting, so.
Sen jälkeen meillä on siis 11
We have 11 proposals for change.
Joista ensimmäinen on tämä
first of which will be returning to preparation. You maybe go through these one by one and then vote them one by one afterwards. So, the blue placard, everybody has their voting slips, I trust. You may
on aina hallituksen pohja.
Get them. Blue will be the board's template, red will be the proposal for change, and white will be empty. So voting these 11 items separately. First proposal for change that we'll be going through is this Fielman's proposal for change, seconded by Luoma, returning to preparation. If we return this to preparation, we'll not be voting on anything else today.
Eli tässä tapauksessa sininen, niin jatketaan käsittelyä, punainen ei palauta
This stage,
valmisteluun ja homma jatkuu sitten toiste.
blue
Sitten toinen muutos.
continuing and red will be
näistä toimiston toivomista muutoksista.
returning these to preparation. The number 2 will be Fielman, seconded by Siren, rows 359, 388 and 398. We'll change these. Have them mention taloustoimikunta, Financial Real Estate Committee.
Sitten kolmas muutosesitys
Number 3, wished by the office, row 315. We'll update this in November. It will be changed in the end of the year. Last and final, wished by the office, Fielman and seconded by Siren, kind of a stylistic change of the word form. So maximum will be blue and the proposal for change will be at most will be red. Moving on to the fifth, by yläpoikelus, seconded by Aalto, Mikkeli students related. Blue will be the template and the red will be that this piece of text will be added in its entirety. Well, nothing will be actually changed, it will be an addition. Moving on. Then Fielman, seconded by Siren, line 458. So starting or continuing student may change, move into the flat 2 months before the start of their studies. If you have the original, I'll be reading it out loud. So the current word form is that a new student may during the summer move into the flat at most 2 months before the start of their studies. So blue will be the template and red will be this changed. Starting or continuing is the definition. So number 7, all applicants must pay the membership fee will be changed into all individual applicants, and at least 1 out of joint applications need to pay student union's membership fee. Next up, line 314. And add the word as an assumption, or to start with, or as a base. In each rental unit will have its own tenant meeting. And the change would be that in it, each rental unit would have, as an assumption, its own meeting. Red for change, blue for template. On line 340, changed. In addition to these tasks, the tenant committee must develop the housing. So change of word form once again from needs to changing into the word would be good too. So less binding word form in this sense. Line 363, addition, or if the chairperson does not want to. A castle warden is a nomination, or actually a name for the chairperson. Fielman is proposing the change that if the chairperson does not want to. So a less binding word form in this case as well. Where in the phrase would this be added to? Yes. So a castle warden
tai jos asukastoimikuntaa ei valita asukaskokouksen valitsemista luottamushenkilöistä.
Apologies from the interpreter. This is very hard to interpret because this text is very bureaucratic and discussing the Finnish word form. Next up, addition on the line 370 in the Finnish document, addition about also the chairperson.
Niin kyllä käytännössä siis on
So in practical terms, the regulation same item will be added the same write-up. Blue is the template and red is the proposal for change. White is empty. Does anybody have any questions at this stage about the question or the voting process? Easier to do now than later. I trust that everybody has their voting slips. Wonderful. Nodding is a sign of acceptance. If the voting result is clear, I will just declare it. If it's very close, we'll do the counting. We have so many voting items. I will ask the vote counters here up front. Saikko and Riihimäki, please come up front. Remember to take your own voting slips because you are also eligible to vote.
Ei enää puheenvuoroja.
No other requests for the floor will be taken.
Sitten mennään.
Then here we go.
Joo, hyvä tarkistaa muuten.
You to actually check how many eligible voters do we have. We should have 33. Nobody has left. One has left and one has actually arrived. No changes to this, I trust. Good. 33 in total.
Pettääkö Engi-matikka?
He's my math. Good. First proposal for change. The first vote to maybe return this to preparation and no other votes. Slips up now. Thank you. Pretty clearly, we have more blue than red. The front row agrees, so the template prevails. Moving to the second proposal for change. First of the office wish changes. The proposal for change prevails. You may lower your voting slips. Third, second of the office wished proposal for change. Red prevails. Moving on. Last stuff of the office wished changes. Red is the proposal. Yes, red prevails. Moving on. Fifth, the addition by yläpoikelus. Aalto seconding the addition. And red for change, blue for template. Pretty clear red. We will be adding this. The proposal for change prevails. Moving on to vote number 6. Voltti, second and Filman, seconded by Sireen. Pretty clear red, so proposal for change wins. Moving on. Moving on to number 7. Filman proposing, Sireen seconding. Vote. Red. So change. Number 8. Filman proposing, Sireen seconding. Addition. Please vote. Proposal wins. Moving on. Number 9. Filman, seconded by Sireen. Please raise your voting slips. Clearly red. Proposal wins. Then we have the second to last proposal for change. Filman, seconded by Sireen. Please vote. Pretty red. No blues. Filman proposing, Sireen seconding. Last vote. Please vote now. Pretty red.
Eli muutos voittaa sen viimeisenkin.
Proposal for change prevails.
On saatu tämän asian käsittely päätökseen.
Thus we have handled all of these items.
Joten muutokset menee
So the proposals for change will be changed into the template, and the motion being that the board decided to propose the representative council to approve the amendments to the housing regulation in accordance with Appendix 8 and repeal the administrative regulation for the halls of residence decided. Closing item 8, moving on to item 9, investment policy. Thank you to all voters and vote counters. Oh, that sounded like an election speech. Sorry, that was not my point. Investment policy.
Joo, Thomas, ole hyvä.
Josta voisi vaihtaa. Changing on the speaker for the interpretation. Thomas, you have the floor. Thank you.
Joo, ja tehdään taas niin, että
Okay. So let's first have the presentation, then questions, then discussion. Please.
Hello. Kuuluuko tää? Joo. Yes.
Hello. Can you hear me? Great.
Hyvä edustajisto, arvon puheenjohtaja.
Dear Representative Council, Chair, Secretary General, others. We're going to talk about our investment policy. So at the start of the year, we had a preliminary discussion on this with the Representative Council. Now let's go through the background details a bit, then why we're changing, what we're changing, and what has changed after the preliminary discussion. Then we will decide on the matter. So quick recap. Why have we proposed this change, a reform? Well, to put it short, I will not read through all this, but to put it short, our current investment policy is bad. That's why we want to change it. And what we want to change, we will increase our stock risk and also add alternative investment targets and also write down some responsibility and sustainability entries. So here's the list of changes. So line 72, previously it said for some time, now it's 2 to 5 years. To make it clearer, lines, oh, this looks peculiar. Well, okay. Line 77, 78, addition. Some funds may be open nature special investment funds where we can allocate and redeem items there several times a year. The previously said that they can be tied into these targets for several years, so to be more flexible. And this may not always be the case. Lines 117 to 120, we have rephrased it. Related to our sustainability. AYYE invests in impact objects. It's very difficult to keep up because the lines are different here than in the actual document. It is impossible to interpret this because we haven't received the presentation or the documents. Thank you.
vähän sitä keskustelun ja pyydän tosiaan jälleen kysymykset ensiksi.
Yes, questions first.
Kiitos herra puheenjohtaja Filma Voltti. Takivan kokouksessa me tuotiin
in the Financial Real Estate Committee meeting,
määrittely siitä, että mihin nämä kuuluu.
kind of brought up this definition
juurikin tämän. Ja sieltä toivottiin, että sen sieltä
of these impact objects.
Niin, että viitataan koko tähän sijoituspolitiikkaan. Tässä on kuitenkin nyt vaan määritteleminen
So we refer to the entire investment policy, but here it's more specific. So we would need to.
Jos tähän haluaa esittää muutosta.
Why is there this addition of investment policy here? Yes, that's a good question. If you want to make a change, you can propose one.
Muita kysymyksiä ei näytä olevan. Voitte pyytää tässä kohtaa myös muita puheenvuoroja asiaan liittyen.
There seems to be no other questions, but you can also request the floor for comments or the like. Saikku.
Luova. Tästä alimmasta tai viimeisimmästä esityksestä.
Saikku from Luova. Yes.
Onko siitä jotain niin kuin
when compared to the previous proposal, without this kind of a concrete changes that it will bring to our investment policy? Will it increase or decrease our investments in impact objects? I think this phrasing now is more in line with what we actually do now. We have enacted responsibility and sustainability in many ways, but it has not been mentioned here in the document. It seems there are another request for floor. Emil, do you have a proposal for change?
Kiitos herra puheenjohtaja. Jos joku voi kannattaa muutosta siihen, että sijoituspolitiikka.
So if anyone wants to support me on this.
Muotoon sijoituspolitiikkaan, eli käytännössä poistetaan toi määrittelemiin sijoitusalueisiin.
Remove this in the investment areas defined by AYY's investment policy, that we would remove these investment areas there. Just talk about defined by AYY's investment policy, so simplify it a bit. Does anyone support this?
Mun on hyvä suolaa tässä jalat pöydällä. On se siellä, kun mä oon lähtenyt liitteessä.
Could you repeat the line for this? I forgot, but it's in the presentation, lines 117 and 118, lines 125 and 126 in the English document. So simplifying it a bit, now it says are considered to be included in the investment areas defined by AYY's investment policy. Proposal is change it to are considered to be included in AYY's investment policy.
Eli riviltä 117 alkaen.
Yes. Starting from line 126 in the English document, starting from line 125, wherever possible, AYY invests in impact objects, provided that these objects are considered to be included in investment areas defined by AYY's investment policies. This is the original. What is the change? Yes, that these objects that these objects are included in AYY's investment policy. Yes. Do we have a supporter for this simplification? Apparently no. And it seems there are no. The request for floor. Stimpert, yes.
You want to support the proposal? Yes, thank you. Eli Filman esittää muutosta ja Stimpert kannattaa sitä.
Proposed by Filman, supported by Stimpert.
Tuonne taululle. Tehdään kuitenkin niin, että suljen tässä kohtaa asiaa.
Also, let's write it down, but now I think we can close discussion since there are no other requests for floor.
Eli Filman esittää tähän ohjesääntöön muutosta niin
So yes, Filman proposes a change. So changing these in the investment areas defined by AYY's investment policy, change it to just AYY's investment policy. So red is change, so simplifying it, blue is the original, no change, and white is empty. Is this clear to everyone?
Erittäin hienoa. Laput ylös.
Excellent. Raise your slips now.
Jaa, tulkaahan ääntä laskea tänne eteen.
I think we may need the vote counters now. Please come forward.
Mikä laput ylhäällä vaan, jos
Please keep your voting slips up.
jerkku kädessä. Jaa, kyllähän se olikin aika selvä loppujen lopuksi.
Yeah, well, actually, it was pretty clear.
Eikö näin?
I think there are significantly more red slips up.
Ei tarvi. Joo, kyllä. Siis muutosesitys voi.
We don't need to actually count them. Yes, the proposal for change prevails.
Eli se lisätään tuonne tai muutetaan niin kuin tässä päätettiin ja siirrytään päättämään asiasta. Eli
So we can now move on to decide. The Representative Council decided to adopt the investment policy prepared by the investment section in accordance with Appendix 9. Now I need some break. So let's have a longer break and continue at 7:30. So in 11 minutes.
että joku puuttuu vielä. Yeah. Do you know where she is? Otellaan pieni hetki vielä siis. Aika hyvin taitaa kaikki olla palannut tauolta, joten...
Yes, I think pretty much everyone is back. So let's continue with the meeting. Moving to item 10, preliminary debate on the plan of action for 2023, presented by Antti Ilmavirta, and also by Monika.
Kyllä. Joo, me vedetään tosiaan Monikan kanssa tälleen tämä ja seuraava kohta tälleen vähän niin kuin vuorovedoilla aina.
We're gonna have a change turns with Monika
mun järjestöpuolelle vai Monika
for this,
kiinteistöpuolelle ne asiat tai mun
depending on whose kind of field it is.
Jos ihan alkuun lähdetään tästä prosessista, niin
so first let's start with the process.
Lähetekeskustelua tähän liittyen. Tai ensimmäistä keskustelua.
Now have the first discussion on this with you. The Representative Council decides on the plan of action and also on the budget.
Samalla päätetään myös jäsenmaksujen suuruus sit seuraavalle lukukaudelle.
And also on the amount of the membership fee. So this decision will be made on the 24th of November.
Ja hallituksen lähetekeskustelujen
and this has been created on the basis of the discussion with the board and in the planning day with the executive group. And now is your turn to comment if you see that something very important is missing. Now is a good time to bring these forward, because now we can still kind of think on them, prepare them, maybe add them. So we are still in the phase where we can just send in all kind of requests and wishes, and that we have only kind of a preliminary framework for this. But of course, realistically, we have to think that we have a limited amount of resources, so we have to do some deprioritization as well. And after this, we will continue working on it with the office. And yes, the plan of action is always reflective of its authors. So I think that the things I'd like to see included is that we haven't entered these are kind of basic continuous tasks there that we do regardless every year. We also had discussions about this with the board, and I think the kind of a general consensus is to rather do a smaller amount of things in a good way than taking on too much projects that we cannot actually do. Well, in these slides, we have too many proposals, so we will not have enough resources to implement all of them, so we have to do some kind of a deprioritization. And the way I see it, each plan of action project needs to be clearly kind of restricted and defined, so it can be done within the year. And once we commit ourselves to these projects on the 24th of November, we should already know by then whose area of responsibility it is, what kind of resources it has, and that there is enough money allocated for the project in the budget as well. And with this in mind, I have kind of prepared my side of the document. So first, we have administration and HR, then we have community, then communications and advocacy, then facilities. After that, Monika will talk a bit more about real estate issues. So kind of a very clear plans for projects. Well, we have seen that our current SharePoint has reached the end of its life cycle, because when we put all kind of groups and everything there in the same document, it contained hundreds of cells with arrows going to every direction, so we saw that we shouldn't just renovate it, we should just make a new one. Because it seems that we really can't fix it. The SharePoint is our most important tool, and it's also Teams is also related to it. So there are most important internal tools. And it's a lot of work to kind of do it again, so it takes a lot of work, but then it will make all of us lives easier. Another important matter in the administration and HR is about improving the tools and practices related to electronic archiving and document management. The inside is quite unstable. It crashes every now and then. If you know how to use it, you can add some things there, but it's not very easy to use when compared to, for example, a Teams or SharePoint-based system. And kind of the biggest challenge is that in the real estate and housing side, there's a lot of paper documents. More will be coming. We have to sign physical papers. So in order to get electronic signing services and electronic archiving systems, it would really help us. Point of order, okay.
Ei ole mennyt ohi, eli tätä dekkiä ei ole toimitettu teille etukäteen, koska se
we have not sent this slide deck to you beforehand, because we just managed to finish it just before this meeting.
Ei siinä mitään salaista ole.
There's nothing confidential here. We just didn't have time to send it to you.
Joo, sorry,
Yes, and apologies for that. Is that one of the things that I kind of forget the things that are done differently here than in Lappeenranta, because in Lappeenranta representatives could directly access the folder with all preparatory material, and I kind of remembered or assumed that the case was. It was the case here as well, but it's not. And yes, why this is important is that the upcoming student center will not have space for a big physical archive. But since these both projects are very big, we most likely will not have resources for it. So we will most likely have to postpone this digital archiving project until the year 2024. And then kind of other things that are not as clear-cut projects, but kind of shows you what's going on in this sector. In the next meeting, you will talk about our IT policy. Hopefully it will be approved at least in some format. It will create more work for Annika's sector. And yes, also we have the Reps and Council elections next year. So we also have to consider what kind of voting system we will use for it. So that's also what we will be working on. Then about advocacy and communication. Here we have several kind of preliminary projects or kind of proposed projects. They will most likely change a bit. One of the things we have identified is the need to update our website. And in this year's action plan projects, we have the service design project, which is related to this, but it's mostly been concerned with communicating about our services. And the idea is that we should develop this website in such a way that when people enter the website, trying to search for something, they will find them clearly. So there's a kind of a clear flow of information and flow of pages. Because now it's kind of very challenging to navigate. If you're looking for something, it's not very easy to find it. And then updating the policy paper, that's something we considered doing already this year, but then we saw that we really don't have the time or resource for it, so we will postpone it until next year. And yes, we also will have a new advocacy and communications chief starting quite soon. Yes, we see that there are some kind of outdated entries there that we would need to update. And that's going to be a major project. And the third thing that was brought up when we discussed with the board are the Reps and Council elections and also the work of the Reps and Council members. So, of course, the classic goal of increasing voter turnout, but also making the Reps and Council more representational, so it would cover our entire member base. Because the representation from arts people and from international students, they are very low when looking at how many we have them as members in our student union. And also we have to think about how to make Reps and Council work more attractive, so that people would want to run as candidates for the Reps and Council, because we have seen it very often that the more candidates we have, the higher the voting percentage is. It's very common in all student unions. And other things that we would need to work on while doing work for the permanent election campaign, then also implementing our arts advocacy project, how to do that, and also creating and sending out a member survey. And then about community. One thing that has been brought up previously is our alumni activities and the role of AYYE alumni. Kind of clarifying our objectives when it comes to our alumni activities. What do we want from our alumni activities? What do we want it to be like? And also, well, we are doing this project together with the Aalto University. They have kindly agreed to share their alumni data with us, but still the question is that how can we implement it into our current system, into our alumni register? And I think the least defined of these is what we discussed with the board,
nimetty raflaavasti
is this Community Structure Project Volume 2.
Ja tiedän liikkuvani vaarallisella vesillä.
I know that I'm on dangerous ground now, but we're talking about this. But what we have seen is that how many volunteers we have and how many kind of sponsor targets our board members have, the situation is very dire, because already now it seems that it's very difficult to respond to all the needs that we have. Yes, as a side note, I now sent these presentations to you via email. But yes, and it's very likely that the number of associations within AYYE will increase rather than decrease. So these so it's that these kind of overarching committees, are they too big already? We need to consider, and do we have enough personal resources considering what we promised to do? I think this is kind of where we need the most details added to it, if you want to approve of this project. And yes, then our other tasks that we need to do, well, the capping of the Manta statue, which is of course not every year our responsibility. And yes, the tutor trainings, because we have more than 1,200 tutors now, and we will most likely have even more in the future. So the amount of work that we use for training tutors is quite big. So we need to think about how would we have a more sensible way to do the training that could be more easily scaled according to the number of tutors to be trained. And could we also get a better compensation from the university if they want us to focus on this more? So we could actually hire additional resources to do this.
Sitten vielä mun puolelta osittain aletaan mennä jo tonne Monikan puolelle.
On my part, we'll also be moving to Monica's side on facilities as a service of our current and upcoming facilities. We have discussed with you, have been proposed wishes regarding this party facility or ballroom. Talk about when we are designing Otakaari, we would have new association facilities. The template for this, that we would create a more broad map of our needs and requirements. What do we have? What do we need more? So we have these empty or emptying spaces.
Ja mitä on sellaisia tiloja, mitä suunnitellaan sitten näihin uusiin rakennuksiin sitä myöten, kun niitä...
What are these facilities that are being planned for these new buildings?
Olisi selkeä yhtenäinen tahtotila.
So after this project we would have a clear view of what we want,
mitä tullaan rakentamaan.
What will be built in the future and what will be created.
Ja ehkä on tarve tosiaan kirkastaa myös, että sitten jos...
Or maybe also when we have facilities for associations that can be divvied out, what will be the grounds for the associations without a club room of their own can apply for these. There are lots of things on the table. The facility system replacements, it is pretty okay at the moment, but the big problem is that from the system we have, we cannot send invoices, which means quite a massive amount of work. We would want a system which does the same and which does the same as the current system, but can also be used for invoicing. That's the biggest problem, I think, the invoicing issue here.
Sitä on yhdistysohjesääntö, kun on muuttunut, niin se vaikutti myös tilakäyntiprosessiin se, että varmistetaan nyt prosessi.
Reservation process, we updated the system so facilities purchases. We have enough reservations. For example, we have had cold appliances or refrigerators exploding. So they have caused a lot of costs. And when something actually breaks, eventually we will know that who is responsible for repairing or replacing it in a timely manner. So there won't be any problems with the practicalities. One clear thing that you have wanted is this smoky lighting and sound system, that they would be good, well resourced. You have enough money for this. So the idea being that we do things, if we do things, we do them properly. Also, looking at security, all of this costs money, and one that we will have to think of is what will the facilities cost to be rented? What is the profit margin for our facilities? Is there a profit margin? If we are subventing or subsidizing facilities, we'll be doing these decisions while knowing that we are actually doing these decisions.
Sitten siellä taisi olla Monikan aluetta seuraavaksi.
Next up we have Monica.
Kuuluuko nyt paremmin?
You can hear me now?
Yes,
wonderful.
Eli asunto- ja
So the housing and real estate activities, which ties in with facilities, of course,
erityisesti sen maailman mukaan
is listed here in the world that our action plan for this year has quite large projects, over the year projects, and we haven't really determined or clarified these plans yet. As you know, we have lots of plans, lots of projects. We will have stuff that's happening in the 10-year plan. We have new facilities, new buildings. We want renovations. We want continuation. So the investment plan will be also up for you. Can actually provide it for you when we actually have the listing of what projects can be developed. Sale of real estate might move to next year, even though we could actually sell them this year, or could have been sold this year. They're actually relinquishing them will take time and will be realized actually next year. And finalizing of this year's action plan projects is something that we will ensure the resources for this year. The updates for the housing regulations and receiving flats, etc. It is a big theme next year. Also to pertain with the digitality. Also the changes to the real estate digital worlds that will change the processes. We have the renovation project checkups, etc. Others will be upcoming. Also the processes for inspecting the flats are being developed. Implementation of also the chosen systems. It's being taken, and that's on the table as well. Changes to DOMO, especially with the regulation changes. This year's theme has been real estate as a whole and moving information. We will take new items here also on the table.
erilaisten roolien täsmennystä, kun meillä erityisesti
Also the current and upcoming
järjestelmienkin kautta
systems, we are mapping them and choosing new systems, and also the teams and service provider role clarifications that are upcoming. Especially the regulation will change the role of staff members in the future and their responsibilities. So here we have kind of this in its entirety, everything that we are doing and will be doing in the future. We are not kind of inventing new things because we have already lots of things on the table as it is and as it stands. But in general, ensuring that we have enough resources is very important. Clarifications and updates to existing papers. So next year we'll hopefully have updates for the real estate policy.
Joo, kiitoksia. Mulla on vielä yksi
Thank you.
kalvo. Sitä
I have one more slide.
Kohta mennään talousarvioon ja puhutaan
We'll go to the financial review soon and talk about money, but on my side,
resurssit on aika tiukassa.
We are tight on the resources, and the point or starting point here is that my side's regional activities can be implemented without more staff.
Kertaluontoisilla investoinneilla siellä, missä tarvitsee ostaa esimerkiksi lisää työtä, vaikka ne nettisivujen
Single time investments, for example, temporary staff hirings can be made. It requires, for example, web page updates, etc. We'll need people to do it, but it's a kind of a single project, not a long-term increase in staff.
On kuitenkin yksi asia, mistä me ollaan nyt todettu,
There's also one thing that we have decreed. We cannot implement with the current resources in its entirety, as has been wished by the representative council, which is the association side sustainable development. And this doesn't actually affect the real estate side. Thinking of, for example, real estate temperatures, etc. These kind of basic activities doesn't require more staff. It is more rather that's something that what happens at the office. How do these things feature in AYY's activities, and how do we encourage our field on resources? Laura, communications manager, had 10% of their work tasks for sustainable development, but the new replacement will not have this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it now that we had one board member, two board members that have this as a side task? Throughout the year, we have decreed that these resources have not been adequate. For example, carbon neutrality plan and implementing that, because Laura quit, has been waiting for new people to take the task. We could purchase it from the an outside specialist, but we discussed it with the board that if we actually do it, let's do it properly. So if we want to do sustainable development in its entirety, we need more resources for this. Talk about half resources, etc., or half a staff member or something, but it will be clarified later. I don't feel like any of the staff members currently have any time if something's not cut from their current jobs.
Palataan tähän keskusteluun talousarvion esittelyn jälkeen. Tarkoittaa sitä, että meillä on tulossa siis muutama suuntaantava äänestys.
We have a few upcoming votes, and resourcing this is one of the upcoming votes or upcoming issues which is coming up for vote. Was it so that you may actually take the questions next? Yes. Opening discussions.
Tosiaan nämä kaksi, tää ja sitten tuo talousarvion lähetekeskustelu nivoutuu vahvasti yhteen, niin
So this ties in
ehkä tulee aika tiivis
strongly with
keskustelu ja sitten voidaan jatkaa vähän laajemmin.
the things we can maybe take a
Tosiaan kaikki suuntaantoa
more
tulee sitten
concise discussion and
talousarvion lähetekeskustelun päätteeksi. Eikö me näin sovittu? Yes.
we'll have a
Ja tehdään niin, että otetaan ensin
discussions of that. First up, if we have any questions.
Ja sen jälkeen sitten laajempaa keskustelua. Ja ensin
and moving on to a more broader discussion after the question.
Regerin vihreämpi aalto. Ymmärtääkseni tässä, mitä
As I understand, what we can do with the current resources is
ollaan pohjaksi esittämässä.
what we are proposing as the template.
Tehdään kunnolla tai ei ollenkaan näyttää itselleni huolestuttavalta, sillä mielestäni, jos halutaan näyttää suuntaa kestävässä
promising that if we don't have any
olla, että ei tehdä ollenkaan.
we shouldn't have like the option of not doing sustainable development. I will clarify the words are mine. I am not actually channeling the board word for word or sustainable development. Rather, we want to go towards being trailblazers.
Puheenjohtajalla on niin kuin halua tarkentaa asiaa.
The board wants to clarify, please.
Niin toki aika paljonhan me tehdään, mutta tässä on kyse just siitä, että
yes, we are doing a lot,
siihen,
but
mitä meidän strategiassa lukee, niin
if we want to do something that is implemented in our strategy,
mutkia suoriksi näillä muotoilullani.
Yes, selkeän.
We need to maybe do some more clarifications. Yes, Emil, please.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja Filan Voltti. Saanko mä sen kiinteistöslaidin, sitä ei se edellinen.
I get the real estate slide.
Huomasin tuossa viimeisenä tuossa ylemmässä yhdistystilojen jakamisen käyttöön
I noticed that
tiloja taas on.
We will hand out club rooms when we have club rooms. Hand out. We will probably not have any of these very soon. Next year's thing, should this not be looked at immediately? Based on the fact that how we divvy these up.
Eikö sitä pitäisi tehdä niin kuin nyt jo?
Niin tässä ehkä nimenomaan tämän keskustelun
based on this discussion,
sitten, jos ja kun meillä on uutta
when and if we have new things to share, we would have a clear process with which we can actually hand them out. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong once again, if I interpret you in a different manner, but the point was not to
muuttaa sit suuresti sitä, mitä tällä
change the current system that we have.
Kuuluuko tämä? No niin,
can you hear me?
Yes. Meillä on kyllä viime vuonna tehty ihan selkeät
last year we have done these clear-cut rules for this process, but process is not the rules. This is more kind of an internal discussion that we need to clarify, that we can do the right decisions when we have quite a lot of staff at the office. We have very many services, so that the service office and the community side and in the board we have lots of staff. We can actually answer in the correct manner, that everybody knows how this will go.
Tuleeko muita kysymyksiä?
Any other questions? Or please then, Emil.
Juvonen Luovasta.
Juvonen from Luova. With what kind of personnel resources is the community framework project number 2 being implemented? Who from the office will be taking place?
Erittäin hyvä kysymys.
An excellent question. This will be strongly going into the kind of wishes file, so it's not been clarified enough that I could actually answer with the required level of detail, but if you're going to implement this, at that stage it will be clear what kind of resources we will have.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja. Kaksi asiaa, aloitetaan
two things.
Tuossa
starting from the easier.
toi tilojen hinnoittelu.
One is that when we have the pricing of facilities,
Se, että on painetta nostaa hintoja.
But, is it just increasing prices or how we are doing it, or all in all, are we talking about just looking at the prices and evaluating them? And secondly,
ollut näissä pohdinnoissa myös näitä
in these discussions, have we discussed maybe getting more facilities that would be free for DBing, or
jälkimmäiseen kysymykseen
I may answer the question here that
tähän niinku tyhjiä tyhjentyviin.
You talked about empty or emptying.
Et onko meillä vapaita
facilities?
Tiloja? Niin, no se on niinku se kysymys, että siis
that is the kind of the question at hand. I will clarify, AYYE has these open facilities which are open for everyone, which are free. Have we thought about increasing the number of these, or how we just talked about if we have free facilities, we'll be giving them out to associations, not the member base in general.
Ei noin yksityiskohtaisesti.
We haven't discussed this in that level of detail as of yet.
Niinku just tähän, että mikä on
It
se
ties in with what is the
jos meillä olisi esimerkiksi
kind of mapping or results for the mapping of requirements.
En mä tiedä, onko tämä yhtään mahdollista, mutta sanotaan, että meillä olisi vaikka joku
I don't know if
liiketila,
this is
joka on
possible
vapaana, jolle
at all. If we have kind of a facility for commercial services that can't find any tenants, could we maybe change that, or so that kind of example?
Tuohon tilojen hinnoitteluun.
Let me answer here on the pricing that
edelliseenkin kysymykseen vielä ehkä
and the previous question.
Osasta tiloja tiedetään, että mitä
but from some of the facilities that we know that
asuinkohteessa niin
they're empty or in a residential building, that what is being wanted for those, it's kind of a question of want. You need to kind of take into factor in the tenants.
Ei ole asuinkohteissa, niin siinä se määrittely on kyllä ja tahtotila on hyvä saada sitten.
So the will is something that should be clarified at that stage. Do we want to focus on individual members or associations or volunteers, or so that all of these are kind of specified. We have different kinds of facilities. About the pricing, it has been analyzed. And association facilities are something that's it's very specific. There are pressures to increase prices, and in the budgeting world, we traditionally haven't had anything, something that we don't look at the prices each year. And when we discussed in the preliminary vote, what is the will, how much do we want to kind of fund in our activities, how much do we want to fund these facilities. So then we have Luukkanen and back to Emil. You may ask for the floor. Luukkanen skisma. It looks very good as a package to me, that we haven't kind of tried to get too much of stuff. So it's very clear as a representative council member to actually get a clear picture of what's being done, what's being focused on. It would be still nice to get a bit of clarification that how much resources does it require that we have these ongoing activities. So we kind of get a kind of a rough estimate that how much of the everyday activities is kind of these ongoing activities that hasn't been brought up in these, and how much of the staff's time is being taken by these plan of action projects. I could maybe answer with my whole 6 months of experience that everyday activities take 110% of the time that we have allocated. So we kind of have a chronic problem of having more stuff to do than we have hours in the day. And these projects should be something that will be prioritized highly. The things to be done. I didn't put them here, but I could have that kind of cutting down on this two broad projects, or getting the balance right to have actually time to develop and do these properly. And we'll have kind of if you want something to be done, these new things, for example, new projects, we would have more time for these as well.
Jatkokysymys tähän vai uusi asia?
Continuations or new thing, please.
Yes, kiitos.
Thank you. So this seems to be kind of an every year problem, that the ongoing activities take so much time that you don't have time for anything else. So this plan of action projects are something extra that want to be done on top of that. So you want to seem kind of be doing new things and not just doing this day to days. It's really nice to hear that people have actually been thinking about maybe cutting down on the variety. So that could be actually nice to see that what is kind of mapping down what are ongoing activities and taking the excess from that to free time for plan of work or objective plan projects, because these are something that objective plan projects are something that the representative council gets to decide on. It's always kind of lame to hear that what we advocate on is extra. And I kind of understand that this is the case, but it's still something to be considered. And first off, thanks. This is a kind of an issue where you can take a stance and an opinion. But in the broadness of the board has also seconded this cutting down on the excess. This is my personal agenda. What comes to these TOSU projects, these plan of work projects, that I want to clarify at this stage that rather these projects are good and important and needed things that we should be doing, and when they have been done or prioritized, they will be prioritized past actually everyday stuff. So it should be thus that why here on my first slide we had this on the process slide. Before we commit to any project, we would actually have the resources for that project and the people decided to be spearheading that project, and we'll have windows and time allocated, so not all of their time will not be doing for everyday activities, rather do less of something else to get these done. And then Emil.
Thank you. Is openness and transparency reflected in our plan of action, or will it be reflected or visible in it? And talked about these purchases when it comes to different solutions. But I hope that we also consider other technological solutions in addition to those mentioned. So, for example, just having a web folder with files. So hopefully you also keep this kind of a more low-tech solutions in mind as well. Doesn't need to be that high-tech. Yes, when it comes, for example, to inside,
ja julkisesti asioiden esittämisen kannalta välttämättä tarvitse korvata esimerkiksi jollain niin kuin tosi kalliilla ja hienolla
we don't necessarily have to replace it with something very fancy and expensive archiving system when it comes to showing documents to representatives. But when it comes to, for example, this mass of documents that we produce in the real estate side, we can just stick it to a shared folder. We have to do it properly as decreed by the legislation when it comes to electronic or digital archiving. Yes, and then the first question about openness and transparency. I don't know what kind of openness and transparency you would like to see. I myself think that this is more of a tool for all of us to steer the operations of our student union and to get input from you and the board and other parties is, I think, the biggest open and transparent element here. Yes, I can clarify it a bit. So currently, if the Representative Council wants to know what's going on with the board, we have to follow their meeting minutes or agendas, but that's the only thing we can really do when it comes to transparency. And it is also difficult for our members. They need to know what we are doing, what's happening. So increasing openness and transparency in this regard would be very nice. Have you considered this at all? Or is this kind of a new thing for you? Yes, well, we haven't, for example, proposed a project related to this, but as the supervisor for the Chief of Communications and Advocacy, making it visible what we do every day to our members for their benefit, I think it's very important. But I think this is more of part of our everyday activities that we constantly need to kind of do better in these matters as well. Okay, any other requests for floor? Of course, if you have any kind of want to comment after we have talked about the budget, you can do that, since these are linked, these two issues. Yes, I think I'm going to move on to the next item, to the budget. Closing discussion. Let's make the decision. The motion is that the Representative Council decide to record the debate on the plan of action for 2023. This has been decided. Closing item 10, moving to item 11, preliminary debate on the 2023 budget for organizational activities. Monica, please, and remember to speak close to the microphone. Thank you. So, the agenda. A short overview of what is the purpose of budgeting. There's the budgeting for organizational activities as part of the AYYE group's budgeting. So we kind of see the big picture, because we have a lot of other budget as well, in addition to budget for organizational activities. And then the progress of the budgeting process for this autumn. Then the funding and net expenses for organizational activities. Starting points for the 2023 budget. Then we'll have time for questions, comments, and then we will have the indicative votes. So short. Of course, you should know what the budget is. Well, it's a plan regarding finances for a certain time period and for a certain target. We may have also, for example, project budgets in addition to these annual budgets. So they may be longer than a year. But yes, it's about steering the use of our limited resources in the way you want.
Tämä on ollut ainakin viime vuonna lähetekeskustelussa nyt hahmotelma, että halutaan nyt tänään...
This is kind of also discussed in the previous preliminary debate that we need to look at this. We need to look at the big picture. We can just look at the finances separate from everything else. But I think this has been taken well into account when discussing these issues. So the budget and action plan is for the coming year, but then when we look at the longer term, we talk about the strategy and the long-term financial plan and investment program, investment policy. And as I already said, when talking about the action plan, we are now working on the new investment policy or investment program. Then as here you can see the budget for our entire AYYE group. Well, today we'll talk about AYYE's organizational activities, its budget, they're in the purple. And it's not just organizational activities that fall within this scope. There are also these shared resources that serve our housing operations, and also communications, expenses. Then there are some kind of resources that are directly related to housing, such as our housing team. So the budgeting items of expenditure for our housing operations. And it's a bigger point of focus in the autumn for us. Then we have AYYE's investment activities that we mostly do not budget. To evaluate our goals in view of our investment policy. Here in light purple, we also have this separate budget related to association or organizational activities. They may include multi-year projects or additional funding that we have received. They're mostly related to our organizational activities. But here is the big picture when it comes to our group's budget. And here's on the lighter colors, we also mentioned these separate companies. Not everyone is directly within AYYE. Here we can see the timetable for budgeting our organizational activities. We started by evaluating our starting points, same as we did with the action plan. Then budgeting schedules and division of responsibilities, we are doing them now. And now we have the preliminary debate marked down here. Last year we made a survey for representing council groups based on the debate. And especially if we had to prioritize certain budgeting tools, we have prepared to do this questionnaire or survey for your groups before doing the actual prioritization of our budgeting tools. Then we will get these group-specific frameworks for the representing council meeting to be held on the 24th of November. And here, before that, we will also hear from the financial committee. Then we will start doing budgeting according to items of expenditure. So it should be efficient to work now when we have the framework in place. at this point. And here's a bit of a reminder of where we get our money from for our organizational activities. Well, membership fee makes up more than 30%, 36 to be exact. And it has increased quite rapidly. So our number of members is increasing. Then we have the investment framework, which will be also up for a discussion this year, whether we will increase it or not. We managed to increase it, or the possibility actually to take inflation into account as well. Of course, back then we didn't yet know how big the inflation will be. So now we have a framework worth 600,000 euros, when in 2021 it was 550,000. And then the administration fees for our housing activities make up 42%. And of course, because of pandemic, we have had more closed facilities, but we also get a kind of a ticket income, corporate cooperation income, rental of facilities, license fees, etc. Also other sales income. So the budget framework is used to provide the framework for the net budgets, where we can better see that how much income we will get, for example, from tickets to events. So we do not budget individual events, but rather look at the big picture. Then when we look at the expenses, here we can see in 2021, we couldn't stay within the budget framework, but it was also a special year. We had the AYYE 10th anniversary year. We managed to get supplementary funding for this special year. Because sometimes it feels like that every year is a special year, but last year in particular. But still, given the circumstances, we didn't exceed the budget by too much or overtly. But yes, administration support functions take up a big chunk of the expenses. Then there are also big items of expenditure when it comes to our community and services. We cannot move all teams' expenses to our housing sector, but most of our teams also produce services for housing sector. So that's why we have transferred some of the expenses there. Then about the division of expenses, it's good to keep in mind that we really don't have a lot of tools to deprioritize anything or kind of to cut down on costs. We have already cut down on services and we do a lot of things by ourselves. So 51% of the expenses go to our salaries. Then when it comes to administration, IT, office expenses, they're pretty much fixed. There is really not much room for savings there. Then the starting points. Well, it's kind of a now, yes. Well, maybe I'll start here from the bottom, then you can continue. I already mentioned these administration expenses in housing activities, that is moved to the housing sector. There's really no more room to increase them anymore. They have increased by quite a lot. Especially after the ARA audit, we have to be very careful that we cannot increase these expenses anymore. And since we also invested in purchased services, done some sustainable development reports, for example, we have seen that we have been quite optimistic when it comes to budgeting for the housing sector, and being overtly optimistic in the budgeting is not reasonable. So one of the starting points is that since there are also resources who do housing activities within our organizational activities, so we will have a related budget, see it grow compared to previous years, and also we cannot transfer any more costs, administrative costs, to the housing sector. So this is kind of the dilemma we have. But we'll see what kind of solutions we can come up with. And yes, now Antti will continue. Yes, from the start of the slide, as Monica already mentioned, what is good is that our number of members has increased by more than we estimated. It will be more than 16,000. We can't yet know how much over it. But yes, the development of membership fees is seen as a plus in our realized figures, finances, but of course we have a lot of expenses as well. Usually salaries increase by about 2% every year. And as you just saw, how big a chunk they take up, the salaries and fees. So if we increase it by 2%, it's quite a big an increase. And inflation affects all prices, of course. For example, cleaning, or the cleaning of our rental facilities, for example. There will be some increases in the costs. And the way I see it, AYYE doesn't inspect, kind of increase the services and products that we sell, increase their price. I'm not saying it's a bad thing that we don't do it, but it just affects our budget or our finances, because the costs increase, but if our income doesn't increase in this regard, makes our lives more difficult. And yes, salaries increase steadily, but the fees given the board have not increased in a long time, even though they kind of don't have as much purchasing power anymore, these board fees. So maybe we should need to examine them so that they would correspond to the level they were back when they were defined. And some additional challenges, well, of course, we've had the pandemic years that don't really give a clear picture of what kind of numbers we may expect in the future. Of course, we do our best to predict it, but we cannot predict everything. And I think it's better to rather budget cautiously and be happily surprised than vice versa. But let's see how it progresses. But yes, it's challenging, and we already talked about the sustainable development issues when we talk about it more in the votes. But yes, I think that's my input when it comes to the budgeting. I propose that, well, we have 5 votes, indicative votes, so let's check them now so people can think on them.
So here we have, we decided with Monica these, what kind of scope, what kind of organizational activity scope should be the starting line for next year's activities,
vähemmän, joka helpottaa
and
resursseja, vai pyritäänkö suunnilleen samaan
financial planning. Number two, how do you take a stance in increasing the membership fee as part of the increase of the funding for the increasing costs? Number three, how do you take a stance on the service fee increases or increasing fees for services as part of the increasing costs? In example, events, facilities, and association services. Number four, how do you take a stance on increasing the investment framework? Investment framework meaning that how much do we take from our investment profits to fund our ongoing activities? And like these years, of course, we won't get as many profits as we could during the better years. And number five, in what scope should sustainable development work be done on the organizational side? So if we can't balance the budget without taking away from the investments, on how much, where do we get the money, and how much can we get from other places? So pertaining to number five, on what scope should sustainable development be done? If we do its current scope, if we increase it, the budget must come from somewhere. So these are kind of the questions. Opening discussions, and as known, we'll start with question and do the more broad discussion. Emil, is this a question? Ilman first, then Regelin. You mentioned that the board is proposing increases for its wages, or you didn't mention any numbers. What kind of increase would be, and what would be the absolute increase, and what would be the level for the board's wages in the future?
Tämä on ehkä hyvä, että minä vastaan tähän kysymykseen, koska minä olen tämän esityksen
I should maybe answer this because I made the proposal, so increasing 20% because we have calculated that if an older person said that have these been ever increased, I would like to actually know, but I couldn't find any information of such increases. And we've dropped down from the 2010 level 19%. We talk about €200 in total for each member of the board and 300 for the chairperson. 1,250 to 1,270. I don't have an exact number, but the cost effect 20,000 in total.
Se oli kysymys Regelin, ja oliko muita puheenvuoropyyntöjä vielä?
Question from Regelin. Any other request for the floor?
Regelin vihreämpi Aalto.
Regelin
Miten
greener
suurta
Aalto.
summaa strategian mukainen kestävän kehityksen työ vaatii?
How much do we need for the sustainable development if we follow the strategy?
Ehkä niin kuin tässä ei ole eksaktisti.
And so we don't really have an exact knowledge of this, no exact knowledge of numbers, but I calculated maybe a half-day worker with okay wages upwards from 30,000 on an annual level. And we've seen so that if we don't have a dedicated staff member to be doing these things, then it won't actually happen. And less than half day, people are actually hard to recruit. You can do some, give or take, but maybe 30-40 can be used as a kind of a rule of thumb. And our understanding is that what could be gained is that we can actually gain the things that have been in the strategy. AYYE could be more active in these things and set an example and act as towards the community, be more active and take them into account more in these things. And Fielman. Thank you, Chairperson. You brought forth the framework increase as an option. Correct me if I'm wrong, but are we not taking 150,000 the red. So in this sense, what would we use? Where were we going in terms of the increase in the framework?
Sijoitustuottoihin nähden.
Niin siis paljon ollaan
Talking in relation to kind of our investment
Me ei olla siis nimenomaan
profits.
lähetekeskustelun jälkeen
Based on this, we are actually building the blocks based on what we receive.
Riippuen, että halutaanko enemmän vai riittääkö nykytaso, millä me lähdetään budjetoimaan.
Or is the current level enough that we can use to budget the price increases and the wages? For example, we don't really have a proposal yet. We're going to create that proposal based on this discussion. I know it's difficult to answer. It's hard to talk about, like, are we talking about several 10,000 euros or 100,000, or it would be nice to actually give any indication of, can we increase the framework, as we know what kind of framework are we talking about? I think the question was so that the questions were based to make the answering easier, but last time when it was being increased, I think we increased 550,000, 600,000. Yes, approximately. So increasing it by 10 or 20,000 won't necessarily actually do anything. I think that 50,000 is something that we could maybe propose, maybe 50K. Depends on if we'll do any cuts.
Ei ehkä kysymys, mutta kommentti.
Not a question, but a comment. The Sustainable Development Strategy current implementation. Talking about current resources sounds more of a prioritizing question. That we made a strategic decision as a representative council that this is something that we want to prioritize, and that we actually have the question of, do we have the funds? Sounds that we are discussing strategy once again. The model doing like once a year, do we still want to continue our original policies? A good clarifications, I meant with current resources that one person's 10% work, or that has been proven to be not enough. And that when discussing, doesn't mean that we should get more money to the sector, but we just need to allocate resources from another sector to this if we want to implement it. I think the question was so that we want to do it according to the strategy, recognizing that it needs membership fee increases always away from other activities. It's our task to continue the discussion and the planning at the office to make this work so that we have enough resources for it.
Yes, sitten oliko siellä jollain puheenvuoropyyntö?
Somebody have a request to the floor. Fielman.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja. Palaan vielä tuohon sijoitusraamin korottamiseen.
Talking about the framework, if we increase the framework, can we cover the losses? On what level, and how will our upcoming investment fund, or how will our upcoming investment fund develop? Can we keep our current level and increase it from here on out? Because we all try to get rid of the membership fee in the future somewhere. We're starting to look for the framework. If we increase the framework, how will it develop, change our equity? The investment funds have grown throughout AYY's history. It's been a bad year, of course, due to COVID, etc. But from at the very beginning used a very similar framework as have kind of a different kind of structure back then in terms of financialities. If our real estate deals will happen, our investment will increase. And with our new investment strategy, we'll be estimating that we'll have a lot bigger funds, but we have projects like the student center that will be funded from these funds. We've had the preliminary discussion in Takiva, and the message was that based on to what things and with what grounds and how permanent will these solutions be on how to actually start increasing these. So that will play a part in this. Regel, then back to Filma.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja. Regelin vihreämpi aalto. Tälle edaattorina AY:n budjetti on aika massiivinen ja sieltä tarkkojen leikkaustoimenpiteiden ehdottaminen.
We have quite a massive budget, so trying to pinpoint stuff to cut back.
Lisäresurssointi muuten katettaisiin nostamalla hintoja.
We've discussed on how to increase the prices to get these, but what would be the recommendations from the preparative parties if we don't get the funds from other ways? What should we cut back? We are not in the level yet in preparation where we can actually point at something and say that we can just take money funds from away from that. This is more on the level that sustainable development issue is on the level that this is something that the current resources and world is not enough. Something should be done, and now we are asking you on how will we develop the thing. And if you feel that we want to do in accordance to the strategy, it will come back to our desk to figure out the opportunities and the details. Otto has a comment.
Niin tässä on hyvä paikka siihen, jos
There's a good situation where that if the representative council feels that if you want these cuts to be on the table, then we'll do so, but we won't prepare them if the willingness is that we don't want any cutbacks.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja. Eli varmistan vielä, eli siis jos me nostetaan raamia sitä.
So checking that if we increase the framework 50,000, we will our equity gains will be less. If we continue with the current process, we would have more money. Is it so? Lots of assumptions there. We have lots of issues like increasing facilities. It's very much affected that what will be cutting from. Correct me if I'm wrong, Monica, but the Financial Real Estate Committee idea is that kind of permanent framework increase that would end up in us having kind of ruining our investment system in the long run. That's not something that we will be even proposing at any point. So even if we would increase the framework, doesn't mean that we would stay at where we are, but we would have more money. Yes, as long as the investment world will perk up once again. It is growing slowly, but it is growing. Juvonen and Regelin. At the end of Regelin's speech, we'll have the last of the floor requests. That clock is ticking. Juvonen Luova for sustainable development, an idea that I feel that
AY:n näköinen,
in order for
niin
it
se
to
olisi
look
hyvä, että
as much as
sillä
AYYE as is
tuntee myös yhteisöä hyvin.
it should, we should have an individual
haluaisin
who knows the
muistuttaa,
community well.
olemme tosiaan
I would like to remind that we are
jossa myös
a
koulutetaan
multi-diverse student union where we have sustainable development specialists being trained.
nähdä tässä
So I could see
opintoja
here
olevan
at the
opiskelijan
end
osa-aikaisessa
maybe
töissä
something
tai esimerkiksi
a
opinnäytetyötä,
student who
että
is
ei ihan sitä
at the end of their
40
studies could
tonnia
maybe do
vuodessa
this
sitten tähän menisi.
as a part-time, so maybe save money, not spend 40K.
Antin puheenvuoroja tosiaan
Antti.
Antin puheenvuoron aikana.
And during Antti's request, the last request.
Regelin vihreämpi Aalto, vain lyhyesti halusin sanoa, että itseäni ainakin
Regelin,
mahdolliset
I
konkreettiset
just like to say that I am interested in these possible cutbacks because it helps making decisions easier because it's a bit vague at the moment.
Ja sitten Filmanin puheenvuoro, ja se taitaa olla
Filman, and then it is the last one for this. I second that of course we want to know these ideas, but in addition that we have the sustainable development expertise, we also have technical expertise. I stated that I hope that our member base would be enabled so that we could do this development on a technical level. Thank you.
Kommentoin sen verran, että se 30 tonnia on semmoinen.
Maybe comment that 30K is kind of a give or take 1,500 a month plus expenses. So that's the level of kind of costs. This is kind of a very rough estimate.
Totta kai siis vaihtoehtoja on.
Of course, we do have different kinds of options, but you wanted a sum. I told a sum.
Toi on ehkä mitä Filman sanoi, niin se on sellainen asia, mitä siinä
What Emil said is that you can actually do with the IT politics and have a stance. Thank you. Closing discussions, and then we will be moving on to these votes. If you, Antti, will put the 5, so maybe could have the vote counters up front. We will have several votes up and coming. These are kind of preliminary votes, obviously, so we don't have to get exact numbers for the results.
Mä kirjaan tänne ylös ne, niin.
I will write these up.
Joo. Eli 5 kysymystä näistä, katselin, että näistä
5 questions. On 3, the first ones have 3 options.
Sitten on 2 vaihtoehtoa, ja tällaisessa tapauksessa
and the last one will be 2 options, and in these 2, the white will be the empty vote.
Joo, mennään katselemaan sitä ensimmäistä sitten.
Let's go look at the first one.
Katsotaan aina yksi kerrallaan.
Let's do so that look these at one by one and moving on to the next one. We have the options in 3 languages, and then we'll be moving on. So the first question, which the interpreter is finding it hard to read. In your opinion, what kind of scope of operations should be the starting point for next year's operations and financial planning? Current scope of operations blue, current operations must be increased white, and current activity must be reduced red. So we have 1 less. Maybe 1 less. We're not doing any permanent decisions in any case, so we should be fine. Vote number 1, Lukkonen. A question from Lukkonen, which the interpreter cannot hear, regrettably. To the interpreters, the question from Lukkonen was that will we take into account here that This year we have Teekkaris 150 large parties, and last year we had the big annual celebrations for the student union. Next year we have the Mantan lakitus ceremony. So we have kind of noticed that every year is special in its own way, but we were kind of looking at our normal activities or basic activities, maybe pertaining to the discussion that I had with you before regarding do we wish that the student union would be doing about the same amount of stuff that we do currently? Do we do more stuff or do we do less stuff?
Saaks mikrofonin tänne?
Get the mic here. I don't remember if the previous question had this, but we had the cut question that I was referring to.
Hienoa. Onko vielä kysymyksiä tästä äänestysprosessista?
Wonderful. Do we have any questions on the voting process? We've had time to read the options. We have 3 voting options.
Laput ylös nyt.
Placards up now.
Kiitos, voitte laskea.
Thank you. You may lower your placards. Voting slips, very clear blue. Well, write up a clear blue majority here. Voting number 2.
Seuraava oli tosiaan jäsenmaksuun liittyen ihan periaatteellisesti, että
pertaining to the membership fee. How do you take a stance on increases to the membership fee as part of the funding for increasing costs?
Inflaatioon perustuva
3 options.
OK, eli kun se jäsenmaksun maksukyky rapaantuu ikään
So when the membership fee is kind of less and less in buying power as prices increase, is it okay to increase it in accordance with inflation? 2 being that we need to actually find the solutions somewhere else, don't increase the membership fee. And red okay is only if we increase our services. That we can increase our membership fee, but we need to have new activities in addition. Okay, and take into account that we have the change in the colors here. So blue, red, white.
Ja kaikki voipia, joten laput ylös nyt.
Please vote.
Pääosin sinistä, jonkin verran punaista.
Mainly blue, I think 9 red.
Sitten mennään numero 3.
Then moving to number 3.
Miten suhtaudut palveluiden hinnankorotuksiin osana kasvavien kulujen rahoitusta?
How do you feel about the price increases of services part of the financing of this organization's activities, for example, regarding events, premises and association services?
Korotus tarvittaessa OK.
So blue, an increase based on inflation if necessary is okay, because everything is more expensive, the incoming money must increase. B, meaning red, is that solutions must be found elsewhere. And that white would be checking the prices is normal and making a small margin is also okay.
Ja sitten mahdollisesti välttää korotuksia jossain muualla siitä hyvästä.
A point of order.
Kiitos siitä varmaan tulkeille ja
for the interpreters as well, this is kind of not a point of order, actually kind of borderline. So
jos teillä ei nyt ole mitään vastakommenttia tähän,
we don't have any comments. Let's go to vote.
Kuulin jo vahtimestarin hengityksen oven
I can hear the
vaihtoehdot sininen, punainen,
warden outside the door telling us to get out of here.
Sininen enemmistö, 9 valkoista ja pari punaista.
So blue majority.
Sitten mennään 4. kohtaan.
Miten suhtaudut sijoitusraamin kasvattamiseen?
Then how do you feel about increasing the investment framework? Long options. So blue would be an increase based on inflation or correcting the administrative burden of housing operations is okay if necessary, assuming that the real estate portfolio is solid.
Taas kun ostovoima kasvaa, niin
Talk about
kasvattaa silleen.
purchase power increases. Should it be increased?
Sijoitusraamia ja saada se
it's sold, not solid. It's very hard to read for the interpreter. That the real estate portfolio is sold, yes.
Kasvattamaan AY:n pääomia ja tässä näköjään valkoinen on tyhjä, ei
and
asiaan.
red is solutions must be found elsewhere, and white is blank.
Kysyttävää vaihtoehdoista.
Questions of the options.
Kaikki on päivän selvää, että laput ylös nyt.
Everything is clear, please vote.
Selvä sininen enemmistö, muutama punainen.
Clear blue majority, a few reds in the mix. Last vote.
Kestävän kehityksen, missä laajuudessa kestävän kehityksen työtä pitäisi
tehdä? Sustainable development, what kind of sustainable development should take place on the organization side? Sorry, this is not in Swedish. So, blue, AYYE should do a sustainable development work according to the strategy, even if it means, for example, raising the membership fee or making savings elsewhere. What we discussed earlier. Red being that AYYE wants to do as much as it can with the current resources, and white is blank.
Toinen vaihtoehto tehdään vaan sen verran, mitä nykyresursseilla voidaan. Eli että
yes, red is that we will use the current resources, will not get more resources, but we kind of acknowledge the fact that
ei tule saavuttamaan niitä.
We won't have the level of doing. We won't meet our goals. White is blank.
Valkoinen on tyhjä.
Ehkä
white is blank.
Vastustus tässä tapauksessa tehdään vain sen verran, mitä nykyresursseja.
I think that the against is red here, if you have to kind of
Sinne aikaisemmin puhuttuun strategiakeskustelussa halutaan pienentää
talk about strategy discussions if we want to change the strategy.
Ja punainen ja valkoinen on tosiaan sitten tyhjä.
And here are the options. Everybody is ready.
Laput ylös nyt.
Packers up now.
Jälleen sininen enemmistö, mutta silti ihan merkittävä määrä
We have a blue majority.
9 punaista oli siellä.
9 red ones.
Se oli siinä sitten, eikö niin?
That's it.
Siirrytään päättämään.
We will be moving on to decide. The Reps and Council decided to record the debate on the budget for 2023. Closing item 12, other business, opening discussions, and you may ask for the requests for first Antti Regelinen, Saiku.
Regelin vihreämpi Aalto.
Regelin vihreämpi Aalto. I'd like to read our comment.
Eli kannanotto aiheesta AY:n edustus Syllin ilmastoverkostossa. Suomen ylioppilaskuntien liiton ilmastoverkosto on nyt käynnistynyt.
Syl Climate Network has started that we don't have representation from AYYE. The network consists of actives in the student unions that will develop climate-related items and will create texts and also participate in panels. Why is AYYE out of this system? Greener Aalto is confused. How will AYYE be a trailblazer in environmental issues if we are not part of the network? Sustainability is also in the strategy. Even though we have limited resources, we don't feel that this is enough grounds that our student union does not have a member in this network. Almost every other student union has a member in the network, and we should at least discuss this subject we don't have enough resources, if we don't have enough resources in the office or the board, we should find an interested person from our student union community. We also ensured from SYL that we can have individuals named in the network post its creation. So we demand that we could have somebody in the network. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, the board comments. Yes, thank you for a well-prepared statement and the feedback. We will discuss this and get back to you in the next meeting. Our sustainable development sector wanted to send their apologies for not being here today, but I'm sure they will address this issue. Great, Saikku, and then Fielman. Saikku from Luova. Just thinking that we've had these meetings in this lecture room A. Do we intend to continue these meetings in this room or move to the other room, which is a bit smaller, where we have been before? Because when this is such a large room, it makes our vice chair have to run around delivering the microphone all over the place. And also here we also sit quite apart from each other. So if it's kind of a small space, we could also discuss with the people sitting next to us more. Is this a conscious decision to be in this big grand hall, or is it just an accident? I think Annika would be the best person to answer this, but well, for this meeting, when we kind of moved them around, we just took a space that was available. But I also sent this feedback forward that when we select the rooms for Spring's meeting, that consider this issue to maybe be in another space. Yes, for the autumn, we have already kind of locked down the spaces that we use. But I'm sure the people responsible will consider the issue next year. And yes, Fielman? I'd like to propose that the board and office will implement a process where everything presented here would be made available to everyone by default. Because if we have to ask for them separately, it's not very nice. So if the board or someone else is holding a presentation, it would be nice if the material would be made available to Representative Council automatically. Yes, thank you. There's a bit of a mishap here regarding this meeting, because it seems that Annika is the only one who probably knows how to use Inside. I really don't know how to use it myself, and Annika is on a vacation. So, and some of the presentations were made just at the last minute, so that's why they weren't available. Apologies for that, and we are willing to tackle the issue, maybe have some kind of a digital committee to look into the matter. Great. Any other requests for floor? No. So we can close discussion and close item 12 and move to item 13, closing of the meeting. It's 9:07, closing the meeting.